You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Hello there, and welcome back to Force Perspectives for the Mandalorian Season 3, Chapter 17, The Apostate. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen, and joining me on this episode, and probably like the first half of Season 3 of Mando, we've got the illustrious Joe Hogan.
Mike, did we get some Star Wars today?
Oh, do we get some Star Wars? There was maybe a little bit of Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
There was maybe a little bit of Star
I
Wars.
should probably check that stuff out.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I think this Star Wars thing, I think it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think people might like it. Man, dude, Mando's back. Bad Batch is firing on all cylinders. Hey, full disclosure, everybody. So there were a few plans for this. The first plan was let's record immediately after it airs at like 3:00 in the morning for you and 1:00 in the morning for me, or I guess like 4:00 for you.
Yeah, 4
and
for
1:00
me.
for me. That's not gonna work. I have work early on Wednesday mornings, and that's a bad idea. I could do it, but it would just be a bad idea. I don't know that I can sustain it for 8 weeks. So we're like, okay, let's not do that. Let's record on Thursdays. Okay, cool. We'll record on Thursday. So it's Wednesday, and we just finished recording Rebel Cells with Kyle. A great episode of Rebel Cells talking about Bad Batch Metamorphosis and everything going on there. I won't say any spoilers in case people are not caught up on Bad Batch, but go watch that episode of Bad Batch because it's fantastic. Huge payoff from a Clone Wars episode from season 2. Fantastic. I love it.
And avoid the banners in Disney Plus.
Apparently. But yeah, so you and I were like we wrapped that one up, actually. Like, we started more or less on time, and then got through it in an hour, in a nice tight hour. We covered everything we wanted to, but it was a nice tight hour, and it was like, should we just go ahead and record now? And so that's what we're doing. So we've literally just recorded a podcast, and now we're gonna record this one because that's how good Bad Batch and Mando were this week, that it's like, let's just keep talking about Star Wars. Let's just keep going. What a great season premiere. The internet is a dumb place full of stupid things that happen, and even the best of us say things that are frustrating and ill-advised, and I'm gonna go ahead and say just kind of dumb from time to time. There's like a sentiment going into season 3 of Mando. I think you guys know, like I was like ready to quit Star Wars podcasting after Book of Boba Fett last year because the discourse just got so exhausting that it was not fun to talk about Star Wars on a podcast or on Twitter or any of that. It was just exhausting. And I see a bunch of people, a lot of the same people that I found a little bit frustrating last year, doing the same thing again already before this episode even aired, right?
Oh boy.
And look, Jon Favreau is out there doing the rounds, doing PR, and Jon Favreau says stuff in interviews without really understanding the ramifications of the words that are coming out of his mouth. He made a comment in an interview, this was last week's discourse, of like, we don't have a series finale planned. I take that to mean that they are going to do this show as long as they feel like doing it. They don't intend, like, they don't have like an end point for the show in mind. Now, he also said in this, I think it's in the same interview that, or maybe it was in a previous interview. There's been a lot over the last couple weeks that he's already written season 4. They're like prepping for pre-production, basically. Like they're getting ready to start shooting season 4. Not ready to start shooting it, but like they're because of the volume, the pre-production becomes the heavy phase, and post is a lot simpler, as opposed to like something like Andor, where it's a lot of blue screen and it's a lot of like traditional effects and that sort of thing. So a lot of that gets dealt with in post. So they're gearing up to start that pre-pro to go into season 4 of Mando to get ready for that. And so he's already written everything, because you have to know what you're doing in order to get all that stuff ready, which most TV shows actually write as they're still writing as they're filming episodes, like traditionally in a 22 to 24 episode season of television. They'll be writing as they go. But streaming shows have kind of changed that model. Certainly the Disney Plus stuff has really changed that model a lot, where it's like you can write the whole series and then start shooting, treat it a little bit more like a movie. But in any case, he's already got season 4 done. Ahsoka is coming out later this year. Skeleton Crew is coming out later this year, which like they've made a really big point of making sure that people know that Skeleton Crew ties into all of this. And we know that it's all driving towards a big event where all of these storylines are going to come together, right? And Rangers of the New Republic was going to be a part of that as well, but it obviously isn't now. We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
There's a
I
great
had the same
throwaway.
thought earlier today. Well,
Yeah.
last night, I guess.
But we know that we're driving towards a major event, right? So it's like, I think that there's no series finale in mind, in the same way that there's no end to the MCU, right? There are phases, and I think that I take this to mean that like Dave and John, and I think at this point now Rick Famuyiwa and maybe a couple of the other sort of key players, they know, John Watts would be one of them, right? Like they know what they're driving towards right now, and that's all they're focused on. It's just like, hey, we got to get all the pieces in play and push everybody towards like their Infinity War Endgame, right? And so I think like that's what we have in store. So there is a direction. I just think that it's not like if you ask Jon Favreau, like, is this a 5-season show? That he's like, I don't know. This is an infinite season show. Like, we're gonna tell stories with Mando and Grogu as long as you guys will let us, basically. And then Pedro Pascal sort of supported that in an interview a couple days ago, going, somebody asked him how long he wants to play Mando for, and he's like, forever. like he sort of said it like kind of incredulous of like, why wouldn't I just do this in perpetuity? Like, why wouldn't I play this character for the rest of my life? And it's like, yeah, why wouldn't you? I mean, for him especially, he splits the role with 2 other guys, like, who finally in this episode get credited in the as main leads, which is nice. That because Mando is a character in 3 parts. Like it's Pedro Pascal. Let me see. I have IMDb open, so this shouldn't take me long to pull it up. Oh, maybe it will. No, there we go. The Apostate. Because it's the guys who do like the stunts. They're in the suit often more than even Pedro is, right? Oh man. Oh, they've got them credited as, because I think Brendan Wayne is one of them, right?
I honestly don't know their names, which is probably
Yeah.
proving your point.
Well, exactly, right? So interesting. I'm looking at IMDb for the first time here, and we have 2 actors playing Gorian Shard, who's the pirate leader from the end. But Carrie Jones, sorry, I'm guessing is the physical, because he's also Black Chrysanthemum. So,
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
yeah, that's interesting. Cool. But then there's another actor also credited with Gorian Shard, Nanzo and Nosy. Oh yeah, I know this guy. I can't think of stuff that he's been in, but I know his face. But anyways, I yeah, I think maybe we'll see if these guys continue um to get credited in future episodes, because it seems like they're credited here because they were also additional Mandalorians in the opening scene.
Okay.
But in any case, I mean, like my point being that Pedro is splitting that role with two other guys, so he doesn't have to do everything. He kind of just shows up to do a lot of the voice work and to do like the scenes with no helmet, which, like, yeah, what a perfect gig. You get all the credit and don't have to do any of the tumbles. I mean, that's how it is for most actors with most action stuff, but I also think that he just loves these stories. I think he just has fun with it. So yeah, I mean, I think that the intent is that they're just going to keep telling Mandalorian stories. Maybe it'll go 10 seasons, who knows. Maybe it'll turn into something else. Maybe these characters will go to another show or whatever. Like, who cares? Like, just let them keep having fun with it, you know. The second
It
piece of
it
controversy, sorry, go ahead.
it. No, I was just gonna say, like, I find it weird that people want to put the show in a box that, like, this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the first time we've had a show that isn't set like, oh, well, this is the show that takes place between episode 2 and episode 3. Oh, this is the show that takes place between the prequels and the original like Rebels was, oh, okay, let's set
Yeah,
that stuff up. Oh, Clone Wars, okay, it's at that area. Like, we finally have this big 30-year gap, and you're upset that it's not gonna end, like, I don't know, 5, 6 years in. Like, let it do its
yeah,
thing, man. Star
yeah,
Wars itself. I know we do a lot of dividing of Star Wars in terms, like, in terms of, like, these eras, like prequel era, sequel trilogy. Like, I get it. I get that it's just, like, kind of the way this stuff goes, the way it's categorized, I guess. But, like, it's just weird. Like, it's what's is it really that hard to, like, do I don't know, man. When George R.R. Martin, I know he's probably a bad example, but, like, when George R.R. Martin sat down to write the first Game of Thrones book, do you really think he knew exactly how it was going to end? He probably still doesn't
yeah,
know how it's going to end, which is not a
yeah.
great thing. But like, point is, like, when you're first starting out a show, like, you don't have to know the exact endpoint of the show to be good. Like, it's sometimes it really is the journey. It's good to have a plan, but, like, and plan ahead, of course. But, like, I don't know, man. I think it's super weird that people are taking this to
Yeah,
be this, like, weird anomaly that, like, oh, well, that means it's gonna suck when it ends. Like,
yeah.
what are you
I
talking
think
about?
I think it's more important to have something to say than it is to have a plot, planned out, right?
Sure.
So I think a lot of this part of the discourse comes from the sequel trilogy and the
Yeah.
nature of how
Yeah.
that went down. And so there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it should be planned out. Well, the original trilogy wasn't planned out. The prequel trilogy was planned out to a degree, but, like, George Lucas didn't sit down and write the Phantom Menace and know that in, two more movies that General Grievous was going to be the bad guy that Obi-Wan was
Right.
fighting. That
Exactly.
was something that he figured out when he sat down to write. He was like, okay, well, we dealt with Darth Maul. We did Dooku. Should Dooku be the bad guy throughout it? And he came up with the idea of, like, oh, I've split Vader. I can split Vader into three parts, right? You've got the monster, which is Darth Maul. You've got the man, which is Dooku, and you've got the machine, which is Grievous, right? And it's like you put those three things like Palpatine didn't start with Vader. He tried all these different things, and Vader is actually like the culmination of his life's work. He's like, oh, you've got everything. You're as powerful as and as dangerous as Darth Maul, you're as smart and conniving as Dooku, and you're as like relentless and indentured as Grievous, right? Like you rely on me to survive, right? Like all of that stuff, and you're immortal because I'll just keep replacing your parts. I'll just, you get smashed, I'll build you again. Like he figured that out as he was going. That wasn't like the plan from the beginning, but it's also genius, right? And it's all like Luke and Leia, they kiss in the first two movies. Everybody talks about Empire, but like she kisses him in A New Hope as well. And I mean, like that one's a very platonic one, but I like he didn't know what he was doing from the outset. He split the character into two because originally Luke was a girl, and he split the character into the twins without really thinking about it, just going like, oh, I want this character to be the hero, and I don't want that to be a woman. I mean, there's probably other people giving him notes, if I had to guess, because it was the 70s. They were like, no one's gonna buy this, you got to make it a boy. And so then when he gets around to Return of the Jedi, he's like, actually, I think even in Empire he was a little bit like, I think I know where I'm going with this, but left it vague. But in Jedi, it's like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. They're twins. They came from the same character. They split from the same character, right? Like it doesn't. You don't have to have a plan as long as you know what you're trying to say, what the point of your story is. And I think that's where the original trilogy absolutely succeeds because, he's got a message in the first one that's very like anti-establishment, these rebels and that sort of thing, and the evil machine of the Empire, and then the mysticism of it with the Force, right? And then Empire kind of carries that through as the connective tissue, but then Return of the Jedi is the ragtag band taking down the machine, right? And that's where the Ewoks come from, and that's why like that stuff. Anybody who's got a problem with the Ewoks is like, well, then you're just not paying attention to what the movies are about. They're the whole point. Like honestly, the Ewoks are the core of Return of the Jedi, and therefore they're actually the core of the entire Star Wars trilogy, like the classic trilogy, because that's what it's all about. That like these teddy bears can take down the Empire and help destroy a Death Star because it's about what you fight for, not what you fight with, right? All that sort of thing. And then the prequels have a very clear message. They have a very clear political message that's like like Reagan Bush government, right? Like it's very, very overt. He's even said as much. And then the tragic romance. So it's like, for all of the faults of the prequels, they're clear. The intent is clear in all of them. Whether it executes in the direction and the performance, we can have conversations about that. But it's three things. It's that political thing, it's the romance thing, and it's the technology part of it, of like pushing the filmmaking as far as you can. And that's what makes the prequels. The sequel trilogy, JJ kind of had an idea, but The Force Awakens is a lot of cool stuff, and then a story to service the cool stuff happening. And then Ryan comes in with The Last Jedi and is like, I've got something to say, but to be fair and balanced with this, he gets a little bit hyper focused in on Rey and Kylo, and the other characters, I wouldn't say the other characters suffer for it, because I think that Poe's storyline is also really, really strong, and he has a really great message there on toxic masculinity and embracing the feminine and all that sort of thing. A man on a heroine's journey, which I think is a fantastic thing to do in a Star Wars. But I understand why a lot of boys get real upset when the women are telling Poe Dameron what to do, because he's supposed to be a hero. They get all mad about him, bent out of shape. But that's actually the point. But then Finn and Rose, like I get where people feel like that one's a little bit of a letdown. I personally like that story, but I understand why it doesn't click for everybody. But then Rise of Skywalker just has like no purpose whatsoever other than to finish the saga, which like nobody asked. No, so it's I think that like in light of Rise of Skywalker being what it is, people saying like, does Mando have an ending planned? I understand why they're doing that because they want to know that we're not going to end up with another Rise of Skywalker. I think that there's a little bit of like oh, you guys are going to do this to us again. But like I would look at it from the other perspective of like defining the Rise of Skywalker as the end of the 40 at that point, what, 42-year saga. What a stupid and trivial thing to do. What a ridiculous way to hamper that story. And instead of telling a satisfying conclusion to the story that you started with Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, and Poe Dameron in the first movie, instead you're just focused on, well, how are we going to solve this Palpatine Luke Skywalker situation, right? And so it's like, okay, so she's Rey Skywalker now, right? And Palpatine gets Kamehameha into oblivion. So like that was the solution. I mean, like, listen, they brought in the wrong writer, and that's the whole crux of why that movie is so terrible. But yeah, like, people I think are just like worried about that now, and so they're looking at Mando and going like, don't do it to us again. And I think season 2 was rocky for some people because it was just like cameo fest, and because it was
It
introducing all
was.
of these other characters in order to build out this time period and this universe. So like, let's bring back Boba, let's bring back Ahsoka, knowing that they're going to get their own shows, right? Like, supposed to be a whole thing. It was a transition season, right?
Mm.
But yeah, like everybody, I don't. We're talking for like 10 minutes about this. I like it. Just I don't know. I think everybody just needs to like chill out a little bit. This is my big thing. This is my big takeaway from like this first part of it, and then we're talking about the next thing because I think there's some actual interesting stuff to talk about in the next thing, not just the controversy, but like the actual what was said. Um, my takeaway from this thing that I need everybody to hear me out on is like, can we wait until the season is done before we say that the season is trash? Like, which is like, I hate that I have to
No,
say
you
that,
can't. We can't wait.
but it's just like, it's like everybody has predetermined that Mando is bad, even though we all love it apparently. We also all think that it's very bad and that it's full of bad things and that they shouldn't be doing it the way that they're doing it. And you guys know how I feel. If you've listened to any of the Star Wars podcasts that I've been on since Andor came out, my greatest fear is that everything now moving forward is going to be Andor, Andor, Andor. That's not what I want. And when we get into the actual episode itself, I will tell you exactly why Mando is what I want and Andor is actually what I want less of. Like, I want Andor to be Andor. I have no problem with it. I actually love the show. I think it's fantastic. But I just don't want all Star Wars to become Blade Runner with Star Wars locations, right? Like, because that's all that is. Like, you could Andor, you could absolutely remove names and locations and tell me that it's a Blade Runner series, and I would believe you, right? Like, it doesn't need to be Star Wars in order to tell that story. It just happens to be Star Wars. Um, and like, it's like we'll get into it, but people just like, why can't this show be like Andor? Because it's not Andor. Because Andor is a specific thing, and Tony Gilroy is a specific type of filmmaker, and he's gonna do things the way he's gonna do them, and it's gonna be that. And Deborah Chow's gonna make Obi-Wan the way that she's gonna make Obi-Wan, and I think that Obi-Wan is fantastic. I think Obi-Wan is absolutely a perfect sequel to the prequel trilogy. Um, Whereas Andor is a perfect prequel to Rogue One. Like just like let everything be what it's going to be. Let them have their own identities and let Mando be the ridiculous 1966 Batman version of a Star Wars story, cuz that's what it is, right? It's Star Trek the original series but Star Wars, right? Like that it and people just like they can't seem to understand that if you allow it to be what it is, then yeah, it's not perfect, right? Which like I also think Andor is not perfect. I think it's expertly made. I think it's a masterpiece, but it's not perfect. Star Wars, right? It's not fun. There's very little fun in Andor. It's super depressing. It gave me anxiety every week. Like it was actually rough to get through. No different than The Last of Us is right now, and I love that show too. And I love The Last of Us video games, but I'm never playing The Last of Us 2 again because I can't put myself through that mental anguish. I love it so much, but it's just, I shouldn't say again, I would never say never, but it's like I have no like draw to go back and replay that game like I do, say, I don't know, like Spider-Man on the PS4 PS5 that I've played through like 5 times, right? Because that game's super fun and it makes me happy to play it. But like, you know, like there are some pieces of media that, you know, like they're important and they're great, but I don't want everything to be that. I don't want Game of Thrones Star Wars, and I don't want war movie Star Wars where everybody just gets blown to smithereens every 5 seconds, right? Like uber, like super violence and all of that sort of thing. Like Star Wars is supposed to have weird aliens and locations and creatures and spaceships, and every once in a while throw in a guy with a laser sword that can move rocks with his mind, right? Like that's what a Star War is. And for me, Mando is like the perfect balance of all of that stuff. Um, and so it, like Mando and Book of Boba Fett really work for me. I think Ahsoka is probably going to be the same because it's within the same part of the universe, and I think Skeleton Crew as well, right? But yeah, I just want people to like accept Mando for what it is and stop trying to make it something that it's not. And I think that if everybody can do that, that they'll be a lot happier and we'll get less of the like, oh my god, this dialogue. And it's like, yeah, it's all, it's been that way since the beginning. And also like let's not act like the dialogue in A New Hope is like, oh my god, this is the best masterpiece. Well, it's like, no, it's, there's a lot of gobbledygook nonsense. And you know, like Princess Leia has like 3 accents in that movie, you guys. Like let's, if we're gonna be that judgmental, like let's be that judgmental across the board and just suck the fun out of all of this. Or we could love this for being dumb Star Wars, just like we love that for being dumb Star Wars. They get dropped into a trash compactor on a battle station that can blow up a planet, and for some reason there's a weird tentacle monster in it. Why? I don't know. Ask Pablo. I'm sure he's got a thing about like in this one book in 1987, somebody was like, it eats all of the organic waste so that they don't have to worry about that, right? So that's why the Dianoga is in there. Or somebody flushed it down a toilet. Who knows? Who cares? It's really cool when they're in there and they're like, I think something's in here with us, guys, and then it tries to eat Luke, right? Like it's fun. It's an adventure. Let it be a fun adventure with stupid stuff like a tentacle monster in the trash compactor. Anyways, just
Yeah.
love Star Wars for what it is. Stop trying to make it something else. You know?
I don't know. People suck.
Yeah. And that
We've
doesn't mean
said
that
it.
we can't be critical. I think that both of us are going to have some stuff to say about this episode that's a little bit
Yes.
like, yeah, okay, there's some weird choices.
And
But
most
at this,
most of my criticisms are for the opening scene, so I'm sure I will sound very negative. But like,
oh, really?
whatever,
Okay.
man.
Oh, that's interesting because I love the opening.
I
Let's
love it. But
before we get into the episode
okay.
proper,
Okay.
let's quickly talk about the 2-year thing.
Okay.
So the other thing that Jon Favreau said in an interview, actually during the roundtable interviews, and we'll give credit to Sky Talkers, a great podcast about Star Wars, because it was I think it was their question that brought it up, or it's their video got sourced. In any case, it was during these roundtable interviews, and there was sort of a question about, I think maybe it was about timeline or something like that. But in any case, Jon Favreau starts going into it, and he's like, "Well, so, oh, it was about Grogu being a bridge between the Mandalorians and the Jedi, who were like famously on opposite sides of the battle. But then here's this character who embodies both elements, right? He's both a Jedi and a Mandalorian foundling, right? So." Is that his purpose? Is that the path forward? Is that, he's going to unite these two cultures, which is like, that's my personal, like, that's what I want to see, right? Like, I want to see that culminate in like stuff later on down the road with like Rey and her Jedi Order coming together with like Grogu and his Mandalorian, and it's like, oh cool, like these things are all one thing, because the Mandalorians and the Jedi are actually super similar. I think we talked about that a lot when we were talking about season 2, and even a little bit during Book of Boba Fett. But so in answering that question, John went into a thing of like, well, so yeah, he spent, there's a couple, it's like a good chunk of time. It's like a year or two with the Mandalorian with Din, right? And then he goes off and trains with Luke, and like for about 2 years, and now he's back with the Mandalorian, and we'll see like how that plays out, sort of thing. I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but that's essentially what he said. Some people have interpreted that as like it's been 2 years since the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian until now. But then he actually was asked on the red carpet premiere yesterday, what did you mean? And he was like, yeah, it's been like a year or two. Like but the way that he responded, everybody got all up in arms. So like, it's been 2 years. And I was like, I was also like my feeling on it was like, John, stop saying stuff like this. Like, you're just, because he's just throwing gasoline on a fire, right? Like, it's just, you're giving everybody all of these reasons to be skeptical about this season and about the storytelling, because there's a lot of people who don't like that Grogu wasn't really away from Din for that long, and that their reunion was in a different show. And it's like, I don't listen. Are you not watching Book of Boba Fett? Which, like, apparently a lot of people have not watched Book of Boba Fett, which is like, that's on them. That's on them. They didn't pay attention. When season 2 of Mando ended with Boba Fett will return in the Book of Boba Fett, and it was like a post-credit scene, which we don't do post-credit scenes in Star Wars, but we did one at the end of Mando season 2, and it was like, Boba Fett's gonna be the Book of Boba Fett, and he's gonna be booking it all over the place on Tatooine, and he killed Bib Fortuna. So you better tune in, guys. Clearly, it's important. But nobody paid attention to that, apparently, and now everybody's mad about it. And and so how could Grogu have been with Luke for 2 years? Grogu being with Luke for 2 years, no problem. I don't care. If that's the time jump, that's cool. I would have liked them to have aged him up when we got back to him. That would have been a really clear indicator of like, oh, okay, like, it's been a while, it's been a couple of years, he's got a little mohawk or something, right? Like, that's whenever I see the fan art, everybody always gives him a little mohawk, which I think is like in reference to an Ian McCaig drawing of Yoda that turned into Yaddle, but from episode 1, from the Art of Star Wars episode 1. But I that's often the case, and it's like, I want us to get to teen Grogu. Like, I want to get there faster than we are, because I want to see him wearing like his little Mandalorian armor with a robe and have a lightsaber, right? His little Tar, not, is it Tar Vizsla? Yeah, Tar Vizsla is the one who built the dark saber, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, little green Tar Vizsla. But in any case, like, we didn't, that's fine. Din wandering the galaxy trying to find the armorer for 2 years, I also totally buy. He doesn't have a ship. He had to walk and take the bus everywhere. And he's like trying to track down the covert, which is like they're called the covert. Like, they're hiding, you guys. It took them 2 years to find the armor, or roughly, right? Because we don't really know what the, like it's Star Wars. Time is meaningless. Sometimes you'll read a story and they're like, yeah, in A New Hope, it took like 3 weeks to get to Alderaan from Tatooine. And then in other ones, you're like, no, it's like the time it took on screen. Right. And it's like, does it matter? Does it? So, well, but then Luke had longer to train with Obi-Wan, and then it makes more sense. It's like, stop worrying about these Jedi training. It is not that big of a deal. It's fine. Well, and Luke was on Dagobah for several months over the course of Empire, because Han and everybody on the Falcon had to use sublight to get to Bespin, and it's like, fine, whatever, guys. If that helps you sleep at night, like, I don't think that it ruins the story either way. so time is really quite meaningless. The only place where 2 years doesn't make a lot of sense for me is that like we end Mando season 2, presumably like Boba circles back around after Luke leaves, coincidentally just missing each other by a couple of minutes on both sides, right? Because we can't have those two characters
Right.
recognize each other and be like, wait a
Yeah.
second. um, he picks up Fennec, and then he's like, cool, got my armor, got my ship, cleared my life debt with Din. Let's go kill Bib Fortuna and take Jabba's palace, right? Like, because that's like the next thing they're gonna do. I was saying to Crystal, I'm like, maybe they stopped for a space burger, maybe they went to a spa for the week because they were like, it's been rough, whatever. Maybe they did like cruise around for a month. They had to go find a Bacta tank so that Boba was not quite so in such rough shape. I Although that wasn't really indicated in Mandalorian, and it was really something that only came up in Book of Boba Fett, but that's fine. It's a bit of a retcon. Who cares? In any case, like I have a hard time believing that everything that happens in the course of Book of Boba Fett between the end of season 2 of Mando and when Din shows up, right, on Tatooine, and Fennec is like, "Hey, you gotta come help Boba," and he's like, "I'm gonna go do one thing first, and then I'll be right back." I That's how it happens, right? She shows up at the end of the Naboo Starfighter episode to give him the offer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, so we're talking about the first 3 episodes, which don't take place very much in the present day because they're mostly the flashbacks. And then one episode, or is it 1 or 2 episodes before we've got like the Black Chrysanthemum episode, I guess. Yeah, because the Rancor is introduced at the end of the. It's been a while since I watched Book of Boba Fett, right? But we got like the episode that kind of focuses on Black Chrysanthemum a little bit, and then I think maybe there's one more, and then Din comes in. But in any case, like there's not a lot of story there unless you're telling me that like Boba was going into that Bacta tank for like days or weeks at a time,
Mm.
right? That was the situation, which is possible. I mean, like if you want to retcon it and tell me that, then I'm like, okay. It's just like there's not a lot of story. There's not 2 years worth of story in the first 4 or 5 episodes of Book of Boba Fett, right? So that's where it doesn't make any sense for me. But also, you know, it also is completely irrelevant to the story. It's like it actually doesn't matter. Like I think like that was what I tweeted was like the good thing about the show not making it clear that 2 years has passed between in the time that Din and Grogu have seen each other is that it will continue to not be clear as the story goes on. Like it's not gonna
Right.
the fact
Yeah.
that it wasn't clear before isn't going to affect the story moving forward because it's not clear because it's not important to the story at this point, right? If it becomes important, they'll talk about it. But yeah, I think like everybody needs to settle down and
Dude,
just like
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No, no,
No,
no. I've been ranting, so you go ahead and talk.
it's just like it's exhausting. Like we've said this before.
Mhm.
Like the best and the worst part of Star Wars sometimes is just the fandom.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I love I love being into Star Wars when Star Wars is good.
yeah,
I don't lose any sleep when I don't enjoy Star Wars.
yeah,
Because the next thing is going to come along and maybe the next one will be for me. Okay, whatever. This isn't like the prequels where, okay, we just saw episode 2. I didn't really like it. Now I got to wait 3 years for the next
yeah,
like real Star Wars thing. Like, oh, there'll be some cool video games. I'm sure there'll be some fun comics and everything, but the next actual George level Star Wars really truly expanding the mythos is 3 years away. That sucks. It's not like that anymore. And like, man, I don't know. I don't know. It's exhausting. And it's been like this since I've been aware that it's been like this since the prequels, right? Like you had all the people who were the OT purists and everybody hated the prequels, but now a lot of that stopped because the kids who grew up with the prequels now love the prequels because to them those were
yeah,
their movies, right? So like that was their Star Wars. So now they're adults and we're the ones that are you're not so much, but we are the ones complaining about the sequel trilogy. And like even though I have a lot of issues with I don't know. I don't get why people get so Like almost, it almost feels like they. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting or whatever, and I'm just frustrated with the whole situation. But it's almost like when they don't like Star Wars, people view it as like an attack on their identity because of how important Star Wars is to them.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. I've talked about that a lot, and I actually tweeted something this morning that that is along these lines, right? So I tweeted out like Star hey, just a reminder that Star Wars is dumb, right? Like one of the guys hangs out with a big talking dog that doesn't talk English. That's dumb. That's dumb. I love it, but it's dumb, right? I and you know, like a big round space station blow up planet, guys. Big laser blow up planet, guys. Okay, how
As
do
one
we
does.
stop it? Little torpedo blow up big laser. Okay, how does that work? Use the force. What's the force? Magic.
Oh,
Okay,
well, all right.
like when you break it down, Star Wars dumb, Star Wars very dumb sometimes. I But it's also like that's the charm, right? And so when I make that analogy of Mando being 1966 Batman, that is not a dig, right? When I say it's 1966 Batman or Star Trek the original series, look, I love the original series. I love Next Gen. I love Discovery. I love Strange New Worlds. I mean, Strange New Worlds might be my favorite, but like because it's got everything that the original series had. It's got all the charm and the wonder of that with all of the technology that we have nowadays to tell those types of stories, and it's the perfect melding of the two. And I should do a podcast about Strange New Worlds, but when do I have the time? But I love that show so much, so maybe I just leave it and it'll just be pure and I can just enjoy it. But anyways, like when I use that analogy, what I'm saying is that like it's Batman 1966 is fully aware of how stupid the concept is of a man
Mm.
who dresses up like a bat to punch clowns in the face. You know what I mean? Like Batman is dumb, you guys. Batman is dumb. The Batman. Go listen to Carl Leclerc from the Wampa's Lair. He's got a new podcast, The Bat and the Cat. He's breaking it down 20 minutes at a time. And there's enough in that movie to do 20-minute segments of the Batman and to talk about it for an hour. And that's exactly what Carl and Amy are doing on that podcast. Go check it out. Subscribe in your podcast services. Batcat Podcast. The Bat and the Cat on podcast services. We're producing it. Thunderquack is producing it, so that's why I'm giving it a big shout out. But also because we love Carl, despite all of his egregious
let's
flaws.
let's not go overboard.
Yeah, okay.
We tolerate Carl.
We are friends with Carl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know Carl.
It's a charity thing. But and anyways, he's like a Make-A-Wish kid, you know.
Jeez.
He'll never hear this because he doesn't listen to any of my podcasts. But we love him. But like the Batman takes the subject matter seriously enough that you can break it down into 20-minute chunks and talk about those 20-minute chunks for an hour. Easy, because Matt Reeves is a genius director, just like Tony Gilroy is a genius writer and director. And that's why Andor is like that takes it so seriously, can do that. But then also like Batman 1966 is perfectly valid looking at Batman and Robin and going like, why is this dude hanging out with this younger dude? And they put on these weird outfits and they go and they punch bad guys. Can't the police do this? No, because the bad guys are ridiculous. This one guy's like, hey, I'm bald. I'm going to call myself Egghead. And everybody's okay with it. Everybody's fine with it. Another guy's like, I'll put question marks on my outfit. I'm the Riddler. My whole thing's going to be riddles. Is that a crime? It's like, no, I'm going to steal stuff and then I'm going to leave a riddle. Okay, so there's the crime. What's the riddle for? So that Batman can catch me. Why would you do that? Why would you put a riddle to tell Batman what you're going to do so that he can catch you? I don't know. I just think it's more fun that way, I guess. Like, it's so dumb, and I love every single second of it. And every time I'm watching Batman 66 and and Batgirl rolls across the screen on her bat cycle, I'm like, this is going to be a killer episode because Batgirl's in it. Is Batgirl a great character in that show? Not really. It's just different from the other one, so I get excited, right? Like it's just like the whole thing is just so dumb. And Mando exists. Not It's not as like arch and pointedly like ridiculous as Batman 66, but it is definitely Star Wars that looks at Star Wars and goes, this is weird, you guys. It's really weird that this knight in this shiny armor hangs out with this little frog dude that can do magic. And they fly around in their spaceship, and it's got a little bubble for the frog so that he can look at space whales. You guys, it's dumb. It's so stupid when you break it down, but it works because it's magic, because it's movies, it's TV, it's storytelling, right? And it's like, and it's myth and it's archetypes and all of that stuff. And so like we love it. We love it because it's also like it's unfettered imagination, right? Like it's just like to me, that's why I love Star Wars. And this episode hit all the right notes for me because it was like, let's have a giant dragon crocodile turtle in the beginning. Why? I don't know, because it'll be really cool to see Din blow it up with his N1 because he's got that N1. Let's do something with it, right? And it's like, it's just an action set piece to open up the episode and go like, hey, remember last season when he killed a dragon? He's gonna kill another one now. Din Djarin, Dragon Slayer. Like the dude's just he's racking up points. It's just like that's fun. That's fun. And yeah, you can be reductive and call it playing with action figures. But to me, it's like, I don't know, like I've spent a lot of time both as an adolescent and an adult playing with my Star Wars action figures. You know, like that's sometimes it's literal action figures, and other times it's drawing, and other times it's just talking with my friends about this stuff. But like all of it's just playing with action figures, and so like why does that have to be a bad thing? And yeah, like yeah, the story needs to be tight, the story needs to be good, the characters need to make sense. I agree with all that, but like let the dialogue be weird and stilted from time to time. It's fine. I think it gives the show character. I think you know, like people speaking in a way that we don't speak naturally. It's like, yeah, this is a show about space wizards, you guys. Like Obi-Wan never said anything normal, and that was one of the jokes, right? Like that was the is like damn fool, I knew you were going to say that. Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him? And it's like, what's happening right now? Like Han Solo's like, who is it? Like he says it later. He's like, where'd you find this old crazy dude? Like why am I here right now dealing with this? And then his dog says something and he's like, yeah, I agree with my dog. And it's like, this is what Star Wars is and always has been. And I think it's actually like delusional to pretend that it's not. That's my opinion of it, is that like I think it's actually quite ridiculous because Andor exists now to be like, now it all has to be self-serious at all times. But even Andor is like, here's space cereal, you guys. We named the guy Cyril Karn, and then one of his defining characteristics is that his mom feeds him Cocoa Puffs, space cereal. Cyril Karn, Cereal Karn. He's just eating cereal. He's eating space cereal, you guys. Even Andor does get that Star Wars is dumb, right? We're making these cogs. What are these cogs for? I don't know. It's like a metaphor for the Empire because the logo is a cog. And then at the end of the season, they're just making cogs because it's gonna take 10 million billion cogs to build a Death Star, and here's a bunch of robots putting those cogs into place, right? Like, so dumb, so silly,
Not on the nose
so
at all.
so stupid. But at the same time, like, man, what a moment in that. Like that's like a post-credit thing, right? Like what a
Yeah,
moment at
yeah,
the
that
end
was
of
after.
season 1
That was
of
cool.
Andor, when we see the Death Star, and we're pulled in and we see the cog and we see these robots and they're putting the thing, and then we pull back and we knew the whole time that they were building pieces for the Death Star because we're not idiots, right? but like then to see it and like pull back, and it's like it's going to take a lot of these things to build a Death Star, so we better put a lot of prisoners in these prisons. Right? And it's like, and we're going to tell the story of why that happens and how fascist regimes suck and I thought authoritarianism is the worst. I And it's going to be super depressing and a real bummer, and you're going to have a lot of anxiety while you watch it, but it's going to be real good. And that's the thing, that's not the Star Wars that I want. I want wom 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 laser swords and pew pew spaceships. Like that's what I want, and I want crocodile dragons. I And when I get that, I'm super super happy, right? And when I get the stuff that we got in Bad Batch this week, which I don't want to spoil, but like when we get that, I'm like yes, this is why I'm here. This is why I think, like I have an extra affinity, I think, for the creatures. Like ever since I saw Tauntaun, I've just and the Rancor, it's just like my brain just goes like, I want that real. I want that to be so real. So when we see the armed uh, lizard monster in Book of Boba Fett, or we see the crate dragon in season 2 of Mando, or this crocodile in the season premiere here, or Kowakian monkey lizards later on in the episode, I'm just like, yeah, like yes, please, more of this, because this is what makes it Star Wars for me. So like I don't know, it just makes me happy. And I'm kind of, I think where I'm at, if you guys can sense the frustration in my voice, I'm really sick of apologizing for like finding joy in the thing that I've always found joy in. But now, because of the way that social media works, and because like we're tapped into the community and that sort of thing, it's like if I say, but was Book of Boba Fett that bad? It's like all of a sudden, like I feel like I'm being judged by a bunch of people who are like, "Oh, so you don't like good storytelling?" And it's like that's not what I said. But I am saying that like Boba Fett, who was a character that I think kind of got ruined over time, they brought him back, they gave him depth, they made him awesome, and then they gave him a Rancor to ride in the season finale, and he did that, and it was awesome, and he fought giant robots with it, and it's like, so is Book of Boba Fett bad? Did Book of Boba Fett make some mistakes in its storytelling? 100%. 100%. There's stuff I don't agree with in that series. Things that I would have done differently. But also, newsflash, I don't make Star Wars. I'm just some guy on the internet who talks about it because, a few dozen people listen to him. This is all your fault, all of you people who are listening to this.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You're just enabling this behavior. I don't actually get a say in what Star Wars gets to be right now. And that's here's the piece of that. Like that's on me. Like I own that. That's on me. Like if I wanted to make Star Wars, I should have made Star Wars, right? I should be out there doing things so that I can go make Star Wars. I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of like a it's like the Monday morning quarterback sort of thing, right? It's really easy to call the plays and say what they did wrong after the game is done. It's a completely different thing to be on the field, even as a coach, and calling the plays, or as but even more so to be like the guy with the helmet on and the other team on the other side like ready to flatten you, and it's like, and make the right call and do the right thing in that moment, right? And making movies, making television, making video games, making comic books, any of these collaborative mediums where you're not on your own and you have to coordinate a team, and there's a lot of people involved in the process from start to finish. Like it's impossible. It's not impossible. There are people who do it. There are exceptional directors, right? There are exceptional writers. There are exceptional producers, and they make incredible stuff. But they are exceptional. The definition of that word is that not everybody can do that, and it can't be that all the time. And like, I don't know, like Jon Favreau can make Iron Man, and then he can also make Iron Man 2. Right? He can make Elf and Zathura, and he can also be in Swingers. Did he direct Swingers? No, he didn't
I
direct
have
Swingers.
no
He's just in it.
idea.
But I like human beings are human beings, and sometimes we're gonna be awesome, and sometimes we're gonna suck. We're gonna have good days. We're gonna have bad days, and I just think that people need to not treat creatives as monoliths, right? Of
Mhm.
you're a constant landmark of whatever it is you said you are, right? Because that it not only does that not allow for stumbles and failures, which I think we need to be gracious and allow for, it also doesn't allow for growth, right? If we say that Tony Gilroy is capable of Andor and only Andor, then we limit the possibility of him going but what if I did tell a Star Wars story about a Jedi? What if I did go into that other part of this universe and explore some of the weird stuff, not just this serious stuff? Because I think maybe he might have something really interesting to say about that, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I just don't think that we should limit creatives in that way, artists, right? That's just um I think restrictions and rules and stuff like that are actually really important for art to thrive, because that's where the challenge comes in. But then, the challenge is in breaking the mold, right? Like the mold is there to challenge the artist to break it. And so you have to have both. Like you have to have an artist that's willing to go outside of that, but then you also have to have the mold, and you have to have the restrictions and the barriers and all that sort of thing. And sometimes it goes well, like the first season of Mando, and sometimes it falls short for people, like the second season, or like Book of Boba Fett. I think this first episode of Mando season 3, I personally think it's exceptional. I watched this and went that's damn good television. It's got some weirdness in it, but like some stuff that's a little bit off, but it's also real damn good. It's got some of the best Star Wars in it, in my opinion. All of that we did the 2 year thing. Oh, I also I got so off on a tangent that I didn't finish my
Eventually, we're
thought
gonna
about
actually talk about the
that tweet.
episode.
We are. I didn't talk about that tweet, and that the second tweet that I did the first tweet of let Star Wars be dumb, and then the follow up tweet that I did to it, I did them as a thread, the two of them. The second one was, um, like like I'm saying this because what I'm actually saying to you is love Star Wars for being dumb, because I love the dumb stuff in Star Wars. Like Boba Fett has a jetpack, right? Like his backpack has jets. He's Boba the Fett, right? Like I love that. I think that that's super cool that Boba Fett has a jetpack, because jetpacks are cool, right? Laser swords are cool. Rancors are cool. Like let the cool stuff be the cool stuff. But when you hate on that stuff, it feels like you hate me, right? And so that it actually hurts.
Mm.
And so stop making the thing that makes me happy hurt me. And I think that when I sort of articulated this, I had an epiphany moment of this is what's going on, and the problem is that we don't all love the same stuff about Star Wars. That's where the issue is. And also, not everybody has the ability to recognize that and then articulate it in the way that you and I both have on this episode, right? They haven't done that introspection for whatever reason. Not that they're not capable necessarily, but just that they haven't been given the opportunity to practice those skills. And so, we end up with the toxic Star Wars community, and I'm being very forgiving right now in this moment by having a little bit of empathy for them and saying they love Star Wars for a different reason than you and I love Star Wars.
Mm.
And when we get mad at them for that, they get mad at us. And now, listen, a lot of those reasons are based in systemic racism, or sexism, or other forms of oppression and targeting of minority groups, and stuff like that. And that's where the toxic stuff gets problematic and is something that we have to fight against. But and when I say fight against, what I mean by that is to ensure that Star Wars and the community is always inclusive and that we defend the people that get attacked. That's being said as a couple of white guys on this podcast talking about Star Wars. It's kind of our job to make sure you form a protective barrier around those people that the jerks are going after, right? And say, no, that's not cool in this community. We accept everybody because Star Wars is for everyone, right?
Hell yeah.
But also, like, I think it's also really important, in order to fight that fight in the right way, in the way that a Jedi would do it, is to understand why they are so upset, so upset. And they're wrong for being upset about some of the things that they're upset about. But at the same time, like, let's recognize that it's it's a fear response. Like, it's a whatever trauma or bad feelings they've got there. When we launch into certain things, like, they feel threatened and then they attack, right? So it's just remembering that there are human beings behind all of those trolls. They weren't always trolls, or maybe some of them were. I don't know. Maybe some people just come out that way. But I, like, I don't know. I just had that moment when I, like, recognized why, because this is the reality of it. My friends that I actually, like, quite like, and in some instances even, like, love and consider almost like family, some of these people are saying some things about Star Wars that really hurts me, because it's stuff about Star Wars that I hold dear, right? And I know that for some of them, they're saying it because they're using a critical lens and they want to talk about these things on a higher level and that sort of thing, and I can appreciate that. But then also, like, when you go into it with that, I'll bring it back to one of my favorite quotes, which is when Qui-Gon says to Anakin, "Your focus determines your reality," right? Like, he's telling him, stay in the present, stay here and now. Don't worry about the future. Don't regret the past, right? Like, your focus determines your reality. But I think in a broader sense, like, it's like, your focus determines your reality links up with what's in the cave, only what you take with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
When your focus is criticism and that's what you go into the episode with, you're gonna come out the other side with criticism,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
As opposed to what I am trying to exercise, and it's very difficult because of the discourse and because I'm terminally online and can't help myself. But what I'm trying to, like, sort of separate and compartmentalize is, when I sit down at midnight on a Tuesday to watch this episode, what am I here for? Why am I up at midnight? Why am I going to be tired all day Wednesday? If not because, like, this is going to bring me joy that's worth it. Like, this is, the juice is worth the squeeze, right? So, like, my focus determines my reality. I go into that episode and I go, like, let's get some Mando. Like, if I get some rad Mando moments and I get some cute Grogu, and if Greef is like, he's Mando, if he does that one time, which he does, he's going to, it's guaranteed. But if he does it one time, I'm happy, because that's what I'm there for.
Dude,
Right?
I
These are the things
love
that
the
make me
way he
happy.
talks. I
I love
love his vocabulary. Like, I love every time he, like, steals the scene for me every time he's in it.
He's so good. He's so good. And listen, when we started Mandalorian back in 2019, I hadn't watched all of the Rocky movies, so I didn't have the full appreciation for Carl Weathers that I do now, because now I've watched all the Rocky movies, and, like, between that and Predator and Arrested Development and Happy Gilmore, it's just like, he is one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood. I think he's just like so underrated. It's ridiculous. But yeah, he's so delightful. I love the transformation of this character from where we met him to where he is now. He's the same but completely different. High Magistrate.
You know
Yeah,
what though?
so good.
2 years.
Yeah, 2
Been
years.
2 years, and look at
I
Navarro,
that's
look at him, like,
Listen,
it makes sense, man.
it does make sense, doesn't it? And that was one of the things that I was gonna say when we got there. But like, yeah, look at Navarro, look at how it's changed, look at how he's changed. It's been 2 years. It's
Mhm.
definitely been 2 years since the mission to rescue Grogu. That's I believe it. I wanna see I I need them to give me a little bit of Book of Boba Fett explanation of like how long that actually was. Or I don't actually. I did it myself. It took him a long time in the back to tank. Like that stuff took a lot longer than it showed on screen. And that's fine. That's fine. There were time jumps in between episodes. It's fine. None of it matters. It's all made up in space, you guys. Do the characters resonate, and do we get to see cool stuff? Those are the two things that are
Are you
important
having
to me.
fun? Are you
Yeah.
having fun watching this? That's
Well,
it.
yeah, bingo, exactly, right? So, yeah, and that's going to be better when the story resonates on like a mythic level and the archetypes are solid and the plot lines make sense and all that sort of stuff. That's all going to enhance it, um but sometimes all you need is lasers, pew pew, and big monster. Let's get into the actual episode. Let's talk. We've talked about a bunch of it already, but I let's talk about the beginning, like the first chunk. So I love that we got the bait and switch, that we were meant to believe that that was Din getting
I
his
did.
helmet for the first time,
I was positive that kid was Din.
especially the moment that like sold it for me is when she says like I don't remember the exact word, but like she's like, I swear to never take off my helmet, and he
Mhm.
starts to say it, and then they get interrupted, and
Yeah,
he never finishes saying it,
yeah.
and I thought for a second that it's like, so he never broke the oath, right? Like I thought that's what they were setting up, and that's what John wants us to think in that
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
right? And Rick Famuyiwa directed this episode. He's been elevated to an executive producer on this season, because he's awesome, and give him the whole series as far as I'm concerned. Let John sit back and be the Kevin Feige of all this stuff, and let Rick take over and bring in a writing team so that it's not just one guy writing every episode. But in any case, I I I Rick's episodes are some of the best episodes of the series, right? Like hands down. Um, and I think this is no exception to that. But yeah, like they definitely wanted us to feel in that moment, and it's not until Din shows up that we're like, oh, okay, this is present day. This isn't a flashback. I thought that was so clever. That's like, what a way to open the season. Just so smart. And also giving us like the detailed shots of the armor building that helmet. There's some Mando mercs out there that were just like salivating
Yeah.
during those moments. They're like, that's me. I made my armor. I'm like her. And they just like, it was definitely, it felt um like kind of a love letter to the helmet, which is like the iconic thing, right? That Boba Fett helmet is so iconic that we have a whole series built around where that character comes from. Like, it's when you stop and you think about that for a second, that it's like Joe Johnston was like, well, Ralph McQuarrie initially is like, here's this character, here's this bounty hunter design, and then Joe Johnston brings it to life with the actual like build of it, right? And I and it doesn't even make it into the first movie. It gets cut, but then it's so good that George brings it back in Empire, and makes it a main character, and we all love it so much that 40 years later they're like, what if we did a whole show about just these guys? Like, what if the show was about these guys and why they wear these helmets? And some of them don't wear helmets, and what's that all about? And let's talk about it, right? For many years, and let's have two. Like, actually, you know what? One show about this guy, not enough. Not enough. We got to have two in order to tell this story. Like, how ridiculous is that? That all because of a T visor in red and green on a little helmet with an antenna on it, um all up to this moment where we get to see her building it and making this thing, and it's just fantastic. And then it's interrupted by an absolutely world-class animated CG crocodile, turtle, dinosaur, dragon,
Kaiju.
a kaiju, a giant crocodile jumps out of the water and starts eating Mandalorians. Like, it literally eats a dude, and I love it. I love every second of it.
By the way, real quick,
Yeah.
last time we saw Armor and Paz Vizsla, it was just the two of them. Now
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch of them. 2 years.
2 years.
Makes sense.
2 years makes a lot of sense. Yeah. What? How? But you sort of intimated, you implied that
Yes.
maybe this was not your favorite part of the episode. Why? Why?
Yes.
Tell me why.
Yes. Okay. So again, we just spent an hour saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, Star Wars fans, don't think too much about it."
Yeah. Chill out.
This is the only thing that the only reason I didn't sleep last night was not because of this scene and because I was upset. It's because of how excited I was because of this episode and because of Bad Batch. They were amazing. Some of the best Star Wars I've seen in a very long time, those 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that disclaimer out of the way, what I would have done differently, the thing that kind of confused and it frustrated me a little bit, is that we have these Mandalorian super commandos, right? These guys are supposed to be the best of the best.
Yeah.
And they were just getting their butts kicked. And I understand the purpose of the scene. The purpose of the scene is to have all this drama, this tension, build up all this stuff. Everybody's in danger, and then Din comes in, and it's to show everybody, other than the little bait and switch. It was to show everybody that this tribe of warriors is stronger, having Din and Grogu as a part of it. I get it. I understand that. But
Yeah.
I do feel like when all of these Mando, quote unquote, super commandos are doing really dumb decisions to fight, like this thing obviously had very strong plated armor on its back. Its back was clearly not its weak point. And a bunch of guys jetpacked up on top of the armor and started, here, maybe this is a good place for the explosives. Mandalorians, where was everybody's jetpack like missiles? How come nobody was using that? And it was just like a lot. It just made an entire group of Mandalorians seem not incompetent, but just like not the effective warriors that they've always been throughout the mythology of Star Wars. And it hurts even more because there's always that like there's a lot of similarities every time the first episode of the show premieres. You see like a lot of poetry, it rhymes, right?
Yeah.
You saw Mando and a not Mandalorian fought a crate dragon. I mean, granted, other people were there kind of doing the same thing. We're really just there distracting it more than anything. Crate dragon's a lot bigger, a lot scarier, and you saw Din basically kill it by himself. And you had a whole group of these guys. I really feel like this scene should have been like, everybody get the kids out of here. 4 super commandos, go take the thing down. That's it. And they do it. And then, just because I don't know what the correct answer is for still achieving the point of showing that Din makes this covert stronger. But I also have a problem with them bringing him back right now in the first place, because it feels like the only reason they did that is to reiterate a scene that already took place in Book of Boba Fett and was literally just like, there was nothing said was different.
Yeah.
Everything that was said last time was already established, and why would Din come back just to have the exact same conversation to then be like, oh, okay, well now I'm gonna go. Like, why didn't he just go since last time? So all of that, I guess. So I was really complaining about the first scene, but it's really this like 2-part thing where for me it didn't have the impact that I think that they were going for. And then the following scene was just like, what was the point of any of this?
Yeah. So my counter to that is that the Mandalorians, the rest of them, they are not Din Djarin. right? And I think uh, we get the great moment in the third episode in chapter 3 when they cover his retreat, right? And they come in and save the day, right? And it's great and it's heroic and it's awesome. It's one of the highlights of the first season, for sure. They're just fighting like crappy bounty hunters on Navarro, right? Like this is a backwater planet. Everybody sucks. Din is like leagues ahead of all of those bounty hunters. They all hate him for it, right? Greef says as much. It's like, oh, he doesn't say as much. He literally says it. He's like, they all hate you because you're so good at your job, right? And then he goes underground and Paz is like, I hate you too. So like all the Mandos underground also hate Din because he excels, right? Like Din Djarin is the hero of our show. He's also Arthur, right? Like he's King Arthur. So like he's special. He's been chosen not by the lady in the lake, but by the Force through Grogu to serve a higher purpose, right? In the same way that Rey is chosen by the Force, in the same way that Luke is chosen, that Anakin is chosen, etc. Right? Like I truly believe that like Din and Grogu being together is because Din is meant to unite Mandalore. He's meant to bring back what Mandalore was before they splintered into the pacifists and the Death Watch, right? Like before they were defeated by the Jedi, before the wars, before all of that stuff. Like I think that over the course of the series, we're going to get back to a point where it's like Din and Grogu represent something that like Mandalore was like the Mandalore, the first Mandalore was truly about, right? And we're going to learn what that is over the course of this story. And so he is, I'm going to use the word exceptional again. He is exceptional compared to the rest of the covert. He stands like above the rest of them. So even Paz Vizsla, who I would say is like the next one, right? It's like the armor and Paz are meant to sort of represent the next tier of Mandalorians. And maybe even Paz is almost strong enough to fight Din, right? But he's not. We've seen Din defeat him in single combat. That's where that stands, right? Maybe the armorer could take Din, but I don't think that we'll ever need to see that. So I think that what this scene does is it reestablishes that not only is Din more powerful because of his because of his friends, because he took his helmet off, because he's an apostate. It's actually not a weakness, it's a strength, right? Because he doesn't solely rely on the covert, and because like Mandalorians are meant to be resourceful, not stuck in their ways. These guys are so busy with their ceremony that they're attacked by, like, they're so into their religion, they're such zealots that they like, she knows what's happening right before it happens, which means that they're fully aware that where they are is dangerous, right? And so, but they're like, well, but we got to do the ceremony. The ceremony has to happen this way. This kid's got to get his helmet, and we've got to put the helmet on him, and we got to say all the things. And so they put everybody in danger with this crocodile thing because of their religious zealotry. And so I think they're lost, right? The covert is lost. The what are they called? The children of the watch, right? They're adrift, and they have been the whole time, and Din stands apart from them and always has. He's the one that gets to go up onto the surface and be a bounty hunter because he goes out there and he brings back the stuff that the rest of the clan needs, right? He's the one who can do it. They only go up one at a time, and he goes up more than anybody. Like, that's all implied in the first season, and Paz hates him for it. So I think, like, if you take all of that into account and then you see what happens here, it's like, I don't think that these guys are out fighting all the time. I don't think that these guys are out like being. I don't think that these guys are Mandalorian super commandos, right? Because I think Mandalorian super commandos are like the guys that we see in Star Wars Rebels that are like the elite ones that the Empire that oh, what's his name? Gar Saxon
Car Saxon, yeah, yeah.
leads, right? That was like who like and that were with Darth Maul and like all of that stuff, right?
Right.
Like
That
those are
I actually have a question for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When was the schism with the Children of the Watch? Like when did they split off? Because originally I thought that they were supposed to be the splinter group from Death Watch, that they were the Maul's commandos, but like I don't think that makes sense. I think you're right that those are the
I
Imperial
I
Mandalorians.
think I think what no, I think what Bo-Katan says in this episode establishes that the Children of the Watch splintered when the rift between the pacifists and the warrior clans happened. Like I think it goes back that far. And I think that like you have Clan Vizsla who like maintained the old ways of like the ruling class of Mandalore, and then you had these religious zealots who, when this happened, went off and were like, no, 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 like we're like, it's like the difference between like I would look at like the pacifists as like Protestants, and then you've got the like the Death Watch are like Catholics, right? And so it's like they vehemently disagree
Right.
about
Yeah.
some very core things about the same religion, and then you have Baptists who are like Protestants and Catholics will agree that like evangelicals are a problem, right? Like not to get too religious political, but because I'm painting with very broad brushes here, and I don't want to alienate anybody. But as somebody who grew up in the church, like this is how we understand it, right? And I am Anglican, so that's Protestant. So you've kind of got like the Protestant religions and then the Catholic religions, and then you've got the evangelicals who are like this splinter group that is like not all, but very many evangelical groups are like they've completely lost the plot of what the religion was about, and like
Mm.
they're just about ritual, and um there are people in charge that are more interested in staying in charge, which I think the armorer is guilty of. She is much more interested in the hierarchy that they have and her being the leader than she is in what's actually best for the Mandalorians, right? Because she cannot see past her own visor, basically. For that like what they're doing is actually they are actively killing themselves by adhering to these old ways, right? But then on the other side, you've got Death Watch who only serve power, and so like we're kind of jumping around in the episode, but like what Bo says is like you got the dark saber, they took off, they won't follow me anymore
Mm.
because I told them that I was going to get the dark saber back, and then you've got the dark saber, go wave it in front of them, they'll all follow you to their deaths, right? Like she's like that's all they care about, all they care about is power. So like that's sort of like this other side of it where it's like they're adherent to like this political power, and the dark saber represents that, it represents this like fealty sort of thing. So I think that's where like we've got like there's that, and then the pacifists are gone, like as far as I'm concerned, like the citizens of Mandalore have all been wiped out,
Yeah.
right? Like that was a genocide, and and the reason why is because they were preaching that the Empire, I mean they were doing it when it was still the Republic. They were like, you guys are on the wrong path, right? Like you're not as altruistic as you all seem to be. You're fighting the same war that the separatists are. Like you're both wrong. And fighting is not a solution to any of these problems, right? And so I think the Emperor was like, just get rid of all of them, right? Like I think at a certain point, he was like, this planet is too dangerous to keep around. Um, and so yeah, like that. I don't know, and I think that we'll learn more about the Purge this season, but um and exactly when that happened, exactly what that timeline looks like. But yeah, we know it's sometime post Rebels, which puts it like sometime either. I don't know. Is it meant to be like the Remnant did it, like the Imperial Remnant did that, or I feel like like it's too big of an operation for the Remnant to have pulled it off.
Yeah, I've
But
always been under the impression that the Remnant was just kind of like it maybe didn't formulate after that, but it was just
yeah,
like I don't
it
know.
could
I
have
don't know
been,
the
but
answer.
it could have been something along the lines of Operation Cinder, right? Because like that all happened in the wake of Endor, so
Right.
it very well like the Night of a Thousand Tears or whatever could have happened alongside Operation Cinder happening other places. It's just like Mandalore
Right.
had
Yeah.
a specific code name, right? Like or Mandalorians have just referred to their part of Operation Cinder as
Sure. Yeah.
the Night of a Thousand Tears. So we're only getting it from their perspective. And maybe if Gideon comes back this season, I think he will, but I will hear about it. And it's like, listen, like the order came, Palpatine was dead, and like there were certain planets that were on a list, and Mandalore was on that list, and so we did it. Like we did what we were told to do, and like, and for him to basically say, like, I would love to for us to see the tribunal, and for him to just be like, I was following orders. Like I would love for him to literally say the words, I was just following orders,
Yeah.
because that would draw the direct parallel of like, hey guys, hey all of you Empire sympathizers out there, that act like the Empire is not so bad. They're the literal Nazis. They're the literal Nazis. Let's say a Nazi thing so that that's super clear. But yeah, so I don't know. It could be that simple, but I think we'll get those answers this season. I think that's one of the things that we're gonna dive into. If we're going to Mandalore and Gideon is going on trial, why would they have talked about that? We've almost like kind of jumped into the Navarro stuff a little bit, but yeah, I, that seems all logical to me. Um,
Well, with that said, it definitely lightens a little bit of my butthurtedness of the scene. You
yeah,
bring up a lot of valid points. I
I,
still don't
I
like it,
that's fine.
but it makes sense.
I
It makes more sense to
I
me.
I think in reality, like I've done a lot of justifying the story, but I think in reality, what we have there is, what if we open the season with them fighting a giant crocodile,
Yeah.
and then going like, how do we show like it's what you said, it's the building the tension, right? So
Mm,
these Mandalorians use everything that we're used to seeing Mandalorians use. They both Boba and Din, right? So they're using the charges, they're using the cables, right? Like they're doing all of this stuff. And I mean, like, listen, the cable thing had to happen the way that it happened, because what an opportunity, right?
yeah.
Mandalorians have these capture wire things. They're gonna like put them all into this thing, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna take this thing down. And then to have the croc roll is such a, like, how you can't pass that up. You have to do
Yeah.
it.
No, I was
um
I was I was about that. I was like, all right, that's pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah, and you gotta have it eat at least one of these guys, and you gotta have it stomp at least one of them. But I think what it suffers from is that the scene went on a little longer than it should have.
Mm,
um and that's really the problem. I think if you cut it down by about 25%, I think you probably wouldn't have had as much of a problem, because it would have been quicker. It would have gotten to the point quicker,
right.
and they wouldn't have seemed quite so hapless. If they would have just gone straight to the cables of like, oh, let's tie this thing down and then we'll deal with it, right? I What I would have liked to have seen is to subvert our expectations of like, oh, it's like a crate dragon, right? So like have one of these guys like shoot a missile inside of it, or like toss one of the charges, like it opens its mouth and they toss the charge in, and have it like explode, and then and it like shudders for a second, and you're like, oh, they did it, they took it down same way Din did, right? Like, oh, he must have learned this from them. And then have the thing like shake and get back up, and like basically like have its mouth open and a bunch of smoke
Yeah.
come out, and it'd be like, oh, it's just as strong on the inside as it is on the outside. You
That would have
guys,
been
like, we're
awesome.
screwed,
I would have
right?
been like, all right, cool, makes sense.
Make it less about the Mandalorians not being able to take it down as much as this thing's indestructible until like, but it's like, yeah, but no organic can withstand a proton torpedo to the butt, right? Like that's gonna bullseye. You know what I mean? Like Din knew what he was doing, and he shows up in the nick of time, and which it then establishes like, you guys, he's your king. He's the Mandalore. He's got the dark saber. He saved you from a dragon. Like, he is a knight in shining armor with his little wizard frog. He's got like, he is King Arthur rolling around with baby Merlin in his pocket. Like, that's who this character is. And everybody, all of his friends see it. All of these allies that he's gathered can see it. Even Bo-Katan can see it. She hates him for it. She hates him so
his
much.
guts.
And Greef is like, we're gonna backtrack. We're gonna talk about the Purgle. Greef is like, dude, forget the Children of the Watch. Forget them. Yeah, you're an apostate with them. Here, you are a knight. You are landed gentry, dude. You're a hero to these people. Be my marshal. Be a lawman. You'd be excellent at it. Like, he doesn't say it, but he kind of like is like, you're even quicker on the draw than I am. Although Greef stood his ground. Like,
Yeah,
let's
he did
be real.
awesome. That was sick.
Greef was a badass in this episode. He did all the talking, and he's like, guys, let's have a drink. Let's talk it out. Like, let's settle this like gentlemen, right? Like, he's really, it's not a con. I think in season 2 it felt a little bit like a con of like, yeah, he's just doing this for the power. And then he's like, that's my school, you guys. And when they're like, we don't care, we're gonna do what we want, he's like, I'm gonna shoot the blaster right out of your hand, and then I'm gonna give you one chance. And then Din is like, I'm gonna give you 0 chances. I killed all of your friends. It's so good. That moment is so good. But let's backtrack. There's a wonderful transition scene here that is, for anybody who's got a problem with the Mandalorian, I say to you, like, the show is pure magic. It is pure magic, because the Purgle are one of my favorite things in Star Wars. Like full stop. They're like, I as a kid I was obsessed with whales, and so that episode when we meet the Purgle in Star Wars Rebels is one of my standout favorite episodes of the series. And for those who don't know, the Purgle have a big role in the series finale, and they are very closely connected to Ezra. I think the symbolism of this, of the Purgle showing up for Grogu. Din is asleep, right? He doesn't see it. This is just for Grogu. The Purgle showing up, the Purgle are a force of nature. They can again, for people who haven't watched Star Wars Rebels, hyperspace travel was discovered on the backs of Purgle, right? Like that's sort of the myth, is that like whoever invented hyperspace travel saw the Purgle do this, maybe even used them to travel at one point in time, right? We don't know. Like thousands, maybe millions of years in the past in Star Wars. But they can travel through hyperspace lanes. The hyperspace lanes are actually not lanes. They weren't crafted by civilization. They're actually like migration routes for these animals, right? So like they represent a lot of stuff in Star Wars, but they are like literally they're space whales, right? And we know what whales symbolize to our cultures, and like they're benevolent and they're gentle giants and all of that sort of thing. I firmly believe that this scene is meant to show Grogu that he's on the right path, right? Like he is in this moment with Din, on who's now set off on a new quest. He's confirmed that he has a new mission, because his mission previously was Grogu and he was lost without Grogu. Now he's got Grogu. He's got to go to Mandalore and prove himself, all that stuff. And Grogu is like, there's a little bit of like a did Grogu make the right decision rejoining Din? We obviously, as the audience, know that that's the right decision because it makes us feel good, right? And it's like, why have these characters if not for them to be a family? Him being separate, all of that stuff with Luke felt wrong, and the stuff that Luke said to him felt wrong. It felt like Luke didn't learn his own mission, his own lesson, right? Of like if leave now, help them you could, but destroy all for which they have fought and suffered, right? Like that's what Yoda says to him, and Yoda was wrong. Like, let's be super clear, Yoda was wrong. Luke did need to go save his friends. That was more important than completing his training. And it works out in the end, right? Luke messed that lesson up and thinks he needs to rebuild the Jedi the way that they were. Grogu is whether he realizes it or not, has recognized that and realizes that family is more important than training, right? So this moment is the Force telling him, like, yes, you're on the right path. You're where you belong. And the reason why I am so confident in that's the intent of this scene. He leaves the little bubble, which I love that it's built so that he can go from the bubble
Yeah,
into the
he can go
cockpit.
back and forth.
He leaves the bubble and we get one of, I think, the most amazing tender scenes in Star Wars. Like, it's as a dad, this is like, it just means it meant a lot to me. Like, I just it really really worked for me. He slides into Din's arms and basically like closes his eyes, and Din kind of holds him tight, and it's like it's not it's not implied anymore, you guys. Like, they are literally father and son. Like,
Yeah.
they are a family, the two of them, a clan of two. If it wasn't clear before, it is crystal clear now. It is so permanently etched on these characters that like that is their relationship. And it's just this thing of like they're both actually right where they need to be, and that it doesn't matter, it's just wherever they are as long as they're together, right? That's what's important. Vin Diesel is somewhere and he's just fist pumping the sky.
He's shedding a tear in a good way.
Yeah, he's just a single tear and he's just yeah. I Yeah, such a great moment. And whatever other problems we might have with the Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett or anything else in this sort of era of Star Wars, I don't care, because this was just, I said it, pure magic for me. Like, this is what Star Wars is about. It worked so well for me. I love it. I love it so much. The what do we what else on Navarro? So we've got the scene. We didn't really talk about the entrance, right? We talked about a little bit. Navarro has like regained its or not even regained. Maybe it's like it's never been this nice, right? But in the approach, even like the planet is starting to look green.
Yeah.
I like the whole planet is transforming, not just the city. Like I'm sure that there's like, we could explain it, that they're like terraforming it so that it's more habitable and that sort of thing. And like whatever operations are going on, they're farming, and the farming is turning it into this other place. But symbolically, it's like, to me, I've always had this thing that like everywhere that Din and Grogu go, especially like everywhere that Grogu goes, it's like there's growth afterwards.
Yeah, they thrive.
It's like like that's his magic, is that the places that he goes, the people that he touches, and we saw this in season 1 when he heals Greef, it sets Greef Karga on a different path, and that different path has resulted in him being high magistrate and building this city and this community that's thriving, and seeing it like that. And like, we saw more aliens and creatures and droids and diversity in this scene than we saw in all of Andor put together. right? And like maybe that's thematically appropriate because Andor is a time in the Star Wars story where the Empire is trying to destroy that, right? They're trying to like create, everything needs to be the Empire. It needs to be one thing, homogenous, right? So maybe that's kind of the whole point. And what Greef says of like, no, we're not bowing down to a different authority. Like that's not what we're about. We're an independent system. So there's a little bit of Lando in there, right? It's like, yeah, you know, we're trying to stay small enough so that we stay off the radar. And Grief's a little bit more like, no, we're going to be so big that nobody can stop us. But the sentiment is the same, that like freedom and independence is what it's about. And I think that's really cool. There's a really cool message there. Going back to the thing of like, the most important thing to me is that this has something to say, right? Does the Mandalorian have something to say? I think it's got something to say about family and about found family. And I think it has something to say about what freedom means post Empire, right? Like how does the galaxy get back to that? And unfortunately the First Order is going to wreck a lot of that, but hopefully we discover that Navarro wasn't one of those places that got ruined by the First Order. So anyways, one day maybe. We talked about the pirates, which is a great setup for later.
You know what? There is one thing.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Marshall Dune.
Marshall Dune. Yeah. She got recruited to the Special Forces, and we'll never see her again.
Poochie went back to his planet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fine. That's fine. I think they handled that exactly how we said they should, and it's perfect.
I feel like that's literally what we said.
Yeah,
they would probably do. It's like, oh yeah, she's busy with the New Republic.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so we see the statue of IG-11, and Din and Grogu have this great moment where he's like, do you remember him? You remember what he did, sort of thing. This reverence that Din has for IG-11. And then we get the twist, which is that he's like, I need him. And we're like, but he blew up. It's like, this is all that's left of him, is a few of these pieces, and we built a statue around it. And he's like, I don't care, take it down, we're gonna fix him. And so Din tries, and it just turns back into a murder zombie droid, which is such a great scene. It's so cool. I don't know. I love that. How did you feel about zombie IG-11?
Let me tell you, there was a lot of horror in our episodes today. That scared the hell out of me. That was the end of Terminator 1.
Right? It was so good. So good.
Like, I knew none of those characters were going to die, but like, I felt the threat.
When he tosses Grogu over to Greef, like, so, and then the droid is the one. Yeah. I love it that the droid is the one that saves them from the killer droid by dropping Greef's statue on him. Who said it? Does Din say that's using your head?
Yeah, of course Din said it, yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but if there was ever a moment to support my thesis that this is the Batman 66 of Star Wars, Din Djarin, one of the biggest badasses in the entire history of Star Wars, made that pun.
Yeah, that was a very Adam West Batman one-liner.
I rest my case. You guys. I'm right. Okay, I will hear no further arguments on the subject. Everybody just needs to accept the truth now at this point. That's it. So yeah, in order to fix this guy, they're going to need to take him to fix IG-11. They're going to need to take him to some master droidsmiths. Thankfully, a bunch of little Babu Fricks have moved into Navarro. Oh, I've got the hiccups. I've been talking too much. So we go and visit them.
Was that actually Babu Frick, or is it just?
I don't know. I don't know if one of them was meant to be Babu Frick or not. But they're what's their species?
I don't know.
Let me look at.
I have the episode up, so I can.
There's no credit for who voiced those little dudes. There were 3 of them, right? I think there were 3 of them. Or maybe if I go into all caps.
3 of the random. The Anzellans.
Anzellans,
Anzellans. Anzellans.
yeah. They're not credited.
Hmm.
It just says Anzellian crew.
Okay.
They're credited as Shirley Henderson, who I'm sure is I think this is also the person who did it for Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, because I think that Shirley Henderson is I I that one, isn't she from, she's in Harry Potter. Yeah, she's Moaning Myrtle in Harry Potter. She's the voice of Babu Frick. And yeah, so she came back and did the voice for all of the Anzellians. But yeah, it doesn't specifically say if one of them was Babu. But in any case, it doesn't really matter. Who cares? They are adorable, and they're gonna try and fix IG-11, but they can't because the memory circuit's busted, and they can't fix the memory circuit. It's too specific. They need the part.
Hmm.
Um, so Din's gonna have to go find the part because he for some reason he thinks that he needs IG-11 in order to go into the mine. I'm sure, whatever, he's got his reasons. It's fine. I'm fine with it. If it means that we get Taika Waititi back, then I'm not going to argue with it.
I,
Like,
the what I kind of came up with, for now at least. I don't know if they're gonna go into it later. It just he's got a thing against droids, and this is a droid that he trusts. And
yeah,
if the mines are poisoned, send the droid in. Send the droid that I trust in to go check it out.
gotcha. Yeah. So I don't know if this is actually going to bear fruit or not, because we've seen in the trailer that he's cruising around with R5 later, right?
Right.
That they retrofit the droid socket on the ship to get R5 in there.
Mm.
So I that kind of says to me that at some point, like, that's going to be, which I love. I love that for R5, for he's
I
finally going to get to go on his adventure.
can't wait. I am
You know?
so excited about that.
Yeah, I love it. But I mean, like, both things could be true. IG-11 could come back and R5 gets to go on an adventure. In which case, everybody wins. Everybody wins. It's all
Mhm.
good. But he's gonna have to go find this piece. That's basically what it comes down to, right? And in amongst that, we get a great moment of Grogu grabbing these little guys that are smaller than him, and he's just giving them a hug. I saw somebody online be like, was he gonna eat that guy? I was like, no, I think he
No,
doesn't understand that
Din
they're,
Din Din straight up says, "No, he's not a pet. Leave him alone."
yeah.
So it's just like a kid with a puppy, a
Yeah,
kid that's too young to
exactly.
understand. I'm hurting the puppy.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that he goes to do it again. He's like, "Stop it." I also listen again. This is the tone of the show. This is what this show is. The bit with Greef and the Anzellian, and like at first Din's like, I don't understand. Do you speak Hadith? Like, can you? And then Greef starts translating stuff that doesn't need to be translated.
Yeah,
And it's one of those jokes that's like, it's funny the first time, less funny the second time,
yeah.
not funny the third time, hilarious the fourth time. Right? Like, it's one of those ones where it's like, I knew it going into it that they were like, this is one of those ones that we're gonna circle around. Just stay with it. Just stay with it. And on the last one, it's like Din kind of like looks over at him. I'm just like, there it is. There it is. Perfect comedy. And yeah, that is a Batman 66 joke, you guys. That is a Star Trek the original series piece of humor. And it works perfectly. I love it. So yeah, that happens, and then they're like, okay, let's go. And you assume that, like, I don't know, like, Din is going off to find this piece. But in any case, he's gonna get waylaid a little bit because he's gonna have to have a wicked dogfight with some pirates. And what's the purpose of this scene? I think to establish this. What was his name again? Dorian something.
I don't know, but
Uh,
he's a talking salad person, and I love it. The talking
yeah,
salad person gained
not
so
Dorian.
much respect in the world of piracy that he became the pirate king. I'm
Yeah,
here for it.
Gorian Shard is the character. Yeah. So Gorian Shard. needs to be established as a bad guy. I think that's all it is. I think we've seen what the fallout from this is going to be. We've seen the scenes in the trailers of Navarro being attacked.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to happen, Din's going off, and I think he's going to go, at some point he's going to get Death Watch, I don't know if they're Death Watch or if they're the Night Owls, right? Because it's Bo-Katan's contingent. So I lean more towards referring to them as Night Owls. But did they call themselves Death Watch in the previous seasons and last season? I don't think they did, right?
I don't.
We never really get a name, and they
think
don't have the
name. Yeah.
they don't have the symbol, because the Death Watch symbol is the 3 stripes, right? Like the claw marks.
Yeah, and they all have the Night Owls. So
yeah, so I think that they're meant to be the Night Owls. So I think like Din is gonna go find them, and there's the scenes with like the gunship, right, with the Mandalorian gunship. So and bring them back to Navarro and fight the pirates. I think we're gonna see that at some point in the season. So I think that's all that is. We're just establishing that these guys are going to be an ongoing menace on Navarro, and a threat to its status as a free world, right?
I saw a few people complaining that it wasn't Hondo. I was like, this guy's gonna die for sure. I don't want
Yeah,
it to be
no,
Hondo.
no. Yeah, this no, like when it was established that pirates were going to be a thing, and then the second that they said that they were for Gorian Shard, I was like, okay, so these guys are all expendable then.
Yeah.
Right? Like these guys are bad guys. This isn't like we got to figure out how to work this out. These guys are a threat that needs to be handled. Which is how that plays out, right? So then the pirate from earlier comes back leading a squadron of pirate starfighters, and Din just he just houses these guys. He maybe accidentally kills a bunch of miners on one of the asteroids, which Greef was talking about earlier. Because a ship does collide with a structure on one of the asteroids. But I thought that was really cool to then see like the mining happening on the asteroid. I hope everybody's all right. Hopefully that was an abandoned mine. But if in any case, it's not Din's fault, it's the pirates' fault. The pirates are the bad guys. And then the pirates have what appears to be a stolen Imperial warship, right? Like that was the vibe you got.
Yeah,
that's an Imperial ship, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember like it.
That's an EU like type cruiser that I've seen.
Yeah, isn't that like the Sun Crusher? Isn't that what the Sun Crusher looks like?
Let's find out.
There's like a micro machine of it, right?
Sun Crusher. Let's see. No.
Yeah, we're both
like you're it's the same like EU era.
Yeah.
As this, because I remember both of those ships were in. Wait, here we go.
No, the Sun Crusher is like a weird like
is there
conical thing, but it is
Gravestone.
Is that what it is?
That's what it looks like. Hold on, let me. Gravestone.
Okay.
Oh, that doesn't look right either. What is this?
It's an Eclipse Star Destroyer.
Okay, that's
okay.
Because I'm looking at an image, but the title of the page is
the Eclipse class dreadnought, also known as the Eclipse class Super Star Destroyer, was a class of Imperial Star Destroyer manufactured. Blah blah blah. What's it come from? What's it? Is it from one of the video games? Because this image looks like it's from a video game.
I don't think so.
It's from one of the books, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's EU, and then someone along the lines made some art of it. I don't remember it being in like.
Oh, is it from Dark Empire? I think maybe it's from Dark Empire.
I mean, I'm not seeing any Dark Empire art of it though. I feel like that would be
the Wikipedia entry has an image that looks like it.
Yeah, that's the art style from Dark Empire. Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. This is
first appearance is Dark Empire. Yeah. So that's what it's from. So that's what that thing is. 100%. That's what that is, because it's got that nose, the way that it's got like that like wedge shape on the front of the wedge. Did I say a wedge shape on front of the wedge? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got that like dip thing, the hockey stick on the front of the Star Destroyer. That's 100% an Eclipse class dreadnought. So there we go. We solved it. Hey, we did like one of those deep dive things. Take that, Star Wars Explained. I'll bet you anything if I bring up YouTube right now, Star Wars Explained has already done like a 5-minute video just on that ship and knew all of this stuff. Didn't have to look at Wikipedia.
This looks
anyway.
smaller than that.
It's not a super Star Destroyer, but it's definitely designed after this same shape, right?
It's very similar.
Yeah. So go to Star Wars Explained because I'm sure that that they're gonna have like a breakdown of exactly which ship this is and how we're wrong that it's not an Eclipse. This is actually a smaller version of the Eclipse. I don't know what's half an Eclipse. Anyways, it's a waxing crescent.
Yes.
We the same joke, same time. Anyways, wicked, awesome. Like this was so much fun seeing that ship. I love how it's got like all the ball gunners from like a bunch. It looks like they stole a bunch of rebellion or not rebellion of Imperial stuff and maybe some Republic stuff and they made a pirate warship, which is a great callback forward to the pirates in Star Wars Resistance who like use a bunch of stolen Imperial and Rebel tech and they make uglies like that their starships are all uglies, right? Which is when you mash two different starfighters together. I feel like this was sort of like I don't know, I hope that this was meant to be a reference to Resistance in some way, that like this is how pirates in Star Wars do it. They get a bunch of ships and they just put them together because those gunners look like they are taken from Republic gunships, right?
Even the pirates in the duel Star Wars Visions. Like they just had all that stuff kind of retrofitted together. They had like a bunch of like stormtrooper armor and
yeah, totally,
you know.
Totally, yeah. So I love that aesthetic. I mean, like these guys were like they look like they were straight out of Pirates of the Caribbean with some Star Wars gear on them, and then yeah, their ship is just, what a great ship. So I'm looking forward to Gorian being a threat throughout the season. Yeah, Gorian Shard, what a great name, man. Listen, I know that like Mando has gotten a lot of a lot of grief, man. I can't. It's getting late. It's late for me. I can't imagine how you feel right now, Joe. But
I'm going to bed as soon as we're done.
Yeah, in any case, there's been a lot of hubbub on the internet about how none of the characters in Mando have names. Greef Karga has a name. Cara Dune has a name. Like a lot of characters actually have names. That's fine. Gorian Shard is one of the best Star Wars names ever. Especially because he's a walking salad.
Who doesn't have a name other than the armorer? Everyone else has a name.
Din didn't have a name for the majority of the first season.
But,
Grogu
like,
didn't have a name for the first season. Yeah, no, I know. Like I look, it's not a criticism that I have. It's a criticism that other people have.
Gotcha.
Frog Lady is just Frog Lady. She never got a name, right?
True.
But Gorian Shard, he looks like a walking salad, and isn't it like Swiss chard or whatever? It's spelled Chard. This is spelled Shard. But like, isn't that a type of lettuce? That's a type of lettuce, right?
It is now.
Anyways, yeah, I love it. He looks like Swamp Thing. He's pirate Swamp Thing in Star Wars, and I don't know. I think everybody should give Jon Favreau a high five right now for that because it's pretty great. And like a practical effect, right? Like an animatronic.
Yeah, he looked like it. He looked great.
Like what a great looking character. And this is where I'm gonna like say that people need to exercise the same sort of forgiveness that they give a practical effect like this. Like for some of the other stuff in this series, like that's all the same tone. They can do this in this one and they're not going to do it in Andor because it's going to take us out of it in Andor, right? But in Mando, we see Kowakian monkey lizards and they're all practical effects. They're not
Yeah.
computer animated, right? And there's a great moment, a great little bit of business that one of the monkey lizards does where it like scratches its belly. And it's like, and it's stilted and it looks like a puppet. And I don't care because Salacious Crumb was a puppet. So that's consistent. And could they have been CG? Could we do them in CG and they'd look even better? Of course we can. Of course we can. We just had this CG crocodile and it was amazing looking. Like so good. And let's go back to the Crate Dragon. The Crate Dragon is one of the best visual effects that's ever been done. That thing is incredible. But also IG-11 moves like a puppet, right? And Gorian Shard looks like a dude in an animatronic suit, and it's cheesy, and his lip sync is off, and I don't care. I don't care. The Riddler, his question marks were drawn onto his outfit with a Sharpie. like if
Nope.
you see it at, I think it's at like I think it's at the Sci-Fi and Pop Culture Museum in Seattle or something like that. But if you get up close to it, to the suit from the 66 show, you can see that it's just been like drawn on with a Sharpie. But on the show, flawless. It looked perfect. It looked exactly the way they needed it. You do what you got to do to tell the story that you're trying to tell. And I think that we should just allow for that magic to happen. We got the great CG alongside these awesome animatronic effects and puppets and stuff, and it's all, sometimes it's physical ships in these scenes and sometimes they're CG. Like let it be what it's gonna be and just tell a cool story, and that's all that matters.
Dumb and fun.
Yeah.
Dumb and fun.
Great scene. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up.
Hold on. I got one little character moment that I have to
Okay.
point out because it was something that I didn't catch my first viewing. I caught it on the second viewing and I loved it. So you remember in season 2, episode 1, Mando walks into that like little fighting MMA place with the Gamorreans fighting each other, and Grogu's with them and everything. Just before stuff goes down and the fight starts, Grogu jumps out, hits the button on the front of his little what is it called that he floats in?
His pram.
His pram. Okay, I was gonna say his bassinet. His pram closes the thing because he has this. We realize he has this anticipation that he knows how Din is going to react and how things are going to go from there. I don't know if you noticed this because this was another blink and you miss it moment. So he's sitting in Din's lap in the cockpit before the space battle starts. Just before Din starts to take like evasive maneuvers, Grogu slides himself between the bandolier and Mando's chest.
Yeah,
and the
I did notice
bandolier
that.
is his little seatbelt.
Yeah,
and because he knew, okay, this is gonna happen right now. Time to hold on. I love that. What a little quick moment, and it's just building on that same thing. Like, oh yeah, he knows. It's that same synchronicity that the Bad Batch has. Grogu has with Mando. I love it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, these are 2 years.
2 years.
It's before like so in total it's been about 4, maybe a little bit over 4 years since the beginning of the series. Like that's sort of, if we take what Jon Favreau has said recently to heart, like that's kind of where we're at right now, is that like sort of the 4-year part, 4-year point, which actually makes a lot of sense because we actually do, this is, although it's season 3 of Mandalorian, it's the 4th season of this story because Book of Boba Fett is part of the story. So like, I feel like that makes sense. But yeah, these two have been around, like they have been together for a while. Also, another thing that I want to point out, and it kind of plays into this because I think we kind of really get to see this in this next scene when they get to Kalevala and Bo-Katan, to her castle. Grogu is in his little pod, right? In his pram. He's got a new one. It's a brand new one, and it's darker in color. It's got some differences to it, right? It doesn't have the little hood on the back, does it? Like it's sort of just flat. I mean, it's more of a seat.
It when it's open, it's not there.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah,
that back
it
part is
goes
not
all the way
there.
down. Yeah.
It's just open. Yeah.
Um and I read it as like in the past that thing was connected to, like, Din could control it with his gauntlet, right? Like we
Mm.
saw that sign, and he would he would push the button to close the thing. And then in season 2 we see that Grogu knows where the button is, he pushes it and hides in the thing.
Mm.
This new one has some buttons on, like the console is actually facing inward to
Oh,
Grogu.
really?
Yeah, it's actually like it's, so this is like his little thing. So there was a little bit of like a not controversy. There was a little bit of a thing with between like a few of us online of like, this is regressive. Like Grogu is not a baby anymore, right? He went and trained with Luke. He should be progressing, not regressing, going back into his egg, right? But I looked at this thing now and I'm like, oh no, that's Grogu's little hover chair. The same as Yoda had, which it was what I've sort of been saying to a few people is like Yoda has the hover chair in Attack of the Clones. Why not just give Grogu a hover chair,
Mm.
right? Like what Yoda had in Attack of the Clones. It serves the same purpose. We need Yoda to like keep up with everybody while they walk down the corridors, because the prequels are 90% people walking down corridors. So we got to have a solution for Yoda to keep up, so that Ewan McGregor doesn't have to walk at a snail's pace all the time. So why not give Grogu a similar hover chair? They did. That's what it is. It's just like the iconography of his pod of the egg is part of the show. So they gave him a new one that calls back to that, but that is actually like, it has actually evolved. It is a new thing. And it's a thing that like he like pushes a button and it moves forward. I don't remember exactly what moment that was, if it was on Navarro or if it was on Kalevala, but at some point in the episode I clocked that like he's got little buttons that he can push. So it's like that's his little thing. It's not, Din's not like it's not on a leash, right? Like he's not pushing a stroller or whatever, a space stroller. It's just like Grogu just has like a little thing so that he doesn't have to like scurry next to Din all the time or ride in his uh his satchel, right? But that like he is master of his own domain. He is king of his castle.
Yeah, I'm looking at a shot on Navarro of a close up, and he has his hand
Yeah,
on that. Like, and yeah, you're right. There is absolutely like some
it's
kind
got
of
little
control
red buttons on
mechanism.
it, I think,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So me my fears of that being like a regressive thing, and I had kind of actually read in the trailer when we saw him in that like, and people were like, oh, he's back in his pod, why is he back in his pod? I was like, I read that scene as like he's a little badass and he's fighting that monster thing, like
yeah,
whatever that thing is.
and it's just him. He comes out of
Yeah,
that like cave, and he's just by himself.
yeah, by himself, right? It's just like this is just how Grogu chooses to hover roll, right? It's just his deal. Um, so let's really quickly talk about Bo. We've talked about this a little bit. She immediately is kind of like, you still got the dark saber, and he's like, yeah, I've still got the dark saber. Nobody took it from me. No one's defeated me in combat. Oh, I guess it's a legitimate question because Paz tried. He was like,
Yeah,
I challenge you,
true. Yeah.
and Din was like, I don't care, I win. You're lucky I don't kick you off this thing and kill you. I man, what an intense fight that was. So good. I But Bo is like, okay, so I guess you're still the Mandalore. She's got such like eye rolling energy the entire time. She's just like lounging in her throne, and she's like, all my people left me. They're gone. You're not gonna find any help here, Mandalorian. Is basically the tone of it. But go find them somewhere. They're off being mercenaries, and if you go wave that thing in front of them, they'll follow you anywhere. Which is a great setup because obviously that's what's going to happen. But yeah, she basically is like, I love this. I love this. Felt like actually a dig at the fans a little bit of like, she says something about like, whatever, go to Mandalore. Do you like go ahead? You're not gonna find, it's not magic. You're not gonna find what you're looking for. And then he's like, she says something, and his response is like, "Look, is it cursed or isn't it? Like, make up your mind." Like he calls her out on it, and I feel like that's a little bit of like Jon Favreau being like, it's not as important as you guys need it to. Like, not every line of dialogue is like, you know, let's go write a novel about it. It's like, just relax, like chill out a little bit. Because she kind of is like, listen, it's like there's nothing there. It's like, so it's not, no, it's not cursed, but like, why are you gonna bother? Because she's kind of like telling him, this is dumb, don't do it. And he's like, I don't understand. If it's not a problem, then what do you care? Like I'm gonna go wash myself in the magic water. And she's like, yeah, go for it, bud. She's so dismissive, so much sass. Good job, Katie Sackhoff, killing it with the sass. Obi-Wan levels of sass, maybe even like, look, listen, exceeding the Obi-Wan levels of sass. Yeah. I don't know. Like, that's basically all I have to say about that. Obviously, Bo-Katan will be back later this season, and it's not the last that we're gonna see of her. But
I'm very surprised that she kind of just not that she gave up. I'm surprised she never challenged Din, because like the contempt in her voice that
yeah,
he still has the Darksaber, and like I don't know, like I it's certainly not a criticism, because I'm wondering what the thought behind that is, because she made it very clear that that's all she cared about, was getting
yeah.
that dark. Like, I will help you, but leave Gideon alone because I want that Darksaber. So I find it odd that, you know, all that time has passed. I mean, maybe she did, and we didn't see it. I don't know, but I just think it's weird that she's just like, oh well, he got it, so that's it. I'm gonna leave it
I
alone,
think,
and now all
yeah,
my forces are gonna leave me. Oh well, like it just seems why it was something that was so important to
yeah.
her that she just it's fine.
I have several responses to this.
Okay,
I think first off, she was much more confident that she could defeat Gideon than she can defeat Din.
okay,
I think that she was like, oh, I'll take Gideon any day of the week, right? But I think that Din is a little bit more of a threat to her. I think the other part of it is that Din freely offered the
mm,
Darksaber, so she knows that there's no way that she can trust. She already got the Darksaber once
right.
by like
In Rebels, yeah,
yeah, in compromised means, right? So
yeah,
she's like, there's no way that she can challenge him and know that he isn't going to throw the fight and just give her the Darksaber,
yeah,
right? In which case she'll just be in the same position that she was before, and nobody's going to
mm,
respect that. It's like, well, didn't he offer it to you? Like it'll be kind of like a, yeah, it's like she has to
true.
win it in combat, and she can't fight Din for it. It's just not, it's not a challenge that makes sense, because he's not going to fight her in the way that he's going to
That's fair.
fight
That makes
Paz,
sense.
right? He'd just be like, here, take it. I yield. And at which point it's like, well, then I didn't win it in combat. You
Yeah.
yielded, right? So I think there's that. I think there's also an element that we got to see in this episode. She does not want to lead. Her heart actually isn't in it. Um, in the same way that, like, she obviously left her family and went with Pre Vizsla because she didn't vibe with leadership back then either, right? Like, there was a responsibility as a Kreese, right, that she would be a leader one day, and she fell short of that, and I think that she doubts herself and whether or not she can. um I think it's a really great position for her to be in, to be one of the knights of the Mandalorian Roundtable, right? Like
Mm.
that, which is what, like, I again truly believe that that's what we're
you
driving at is,
you've been preaching this for years
yeah,
now.
yeah, that, like, that's the whole point, and that's why I keep going back to Din being King Arthur, the fact that he has slayed 2 dragons, not that I don't know that King Arthur ever really slays any dragons. I think some of the other knights slay dragons, but I don't think that Arthur ever does. But he holds Excalibur, right? Like he is, and the reason why King Arthur is a good leader is because he doesn't believe himself to necessarily be a leader. It's like there are other people who seek power, and there are people who have power thrust upon them, right? Like that's sort of the saying. And Arthur in those legends is a person who, like, the Lady of the Lake appears and throws the sword at him, and that's why he's like, tells him that he's worthy. He doesn't tell others that he's worthy. He pulls the sword from the stone, uh, when others can't, right? Because the other people are seeking power, and he is just good, right? And I think that Din is the same. I felt like Din wasn't seeking the Darksaber. The Darksaber found him, right? Just like Grogu. And everybody else recognizes that Din is a hero. I think if you went back to The Believer and you kind of look at that episode with that um with that lens, and you look at the way that everybody talks to Din, and the fact that, like, Boba recognizes it immediately. Like, once Boba realizes that they're not adversaries, he turns around and he's like, okay, I'm not gonna leave, like, I'm gonna help you. We're gonna sort this out. We're gonna get the kid back, right? Like he like Boba Fett, who, like, previously to this, and now we know everything that he went through up until that point, so we went through a major character growth as well. But, like, Boba Fett, who was very adversarial to everyone he met up until this point, especially if we look at him in the Clone Wars, the Daniel Logan Boba. He's just an impetuous, obnoxious twerp, because he's written that way. That's what he's supposed to be. And even he looks at Din and he goes, okay, fine, I'll swear fealty to you until this job is done. Like, I'm gonna give you my word that, like, I'm in your debt until I get that kid back. Because I said that I'd help you rescue him, no matter what. So, Boba Fett's willing to follow him to hell and back. For better or worse, Cara Dune is willing to follow him. Greef will do anything for Din and Grogu, right? Like, everywhere he goes, like, he finds these allies that will literally put their lives on the line for him, because they all recognize something in him that he doesn't recognize in himself. And I think that Bo also recognizes that. I think she also sees it. She hates it.
Yeah.
She absolutely hates it. And so every opportunity she gets, she tries to cut him down. Or, like, you know that the children of the Watch are a bunch of idiots. And he's like, well, it's my religion. Sorry, it's the way I was raised. It means something to me. And she's like, well, that's dumb. I think you're dumb. And, like, it's like, I think that you're a little bit like the lady doth protest too much.
Yeah.
A little. Like, she's like, nobody else goes after him for this, but she really does. And it's because she's upset that he actually is worthy, right? So that's my read on it.
No,
And
that's solid. That works.
I think it's good, because I think that by the time this all shakes out and we have our Council of Mandalore, we've got Mando sitting at the top of it. And I don't think that Mandalore will actually be the seat of the new Mandalore. I think that Navarro is being set up as the new homeworld of Mandalore. But and that's why the First Order's not going to mess with it. But when they do that, when they set up their castle on Navarro, like that you'll have Din as the leader, but that, like, only because, like, he constantly goes to others for counsel. He always listens, right? He never thinks he has the answer. He's constantly seeking them out, right? So it'll be him, the Armorer, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett. If it were up to me, if I were making Star Wars, I know I said earlier that I'm not, but if I were, Omega, and I don't know, maybe a couple of other, maybe you know, Sabine as well. But like, bring all the Mandalorians together, with basically all of our named characters, all of our hero The armorer doesn't have a name,
You
but you know
think
what I mean.
Boba would leave Tatooine?
No, I don't think that that'll be necessary, right? Like I
Okay.
think that, but I think also that there might be an opportunity of like Boba is trying to do something on Tatooine. And I think that maybe if he comes to Navarro, he'll look at it and go, "Oh, this is what I'm trying to do."
Mm.
And maybe there will be a moment where he recognizes, although like I think because of the his relationship with the Tuscans, he's got a little bit of a claim.
Yeah.
Even though he's not a
Yeah.
true Tuscan, he is an adopted Tuscan and therefore
Sure. Yeah.
has a claim to Tatooine as a homeworld. But like I could see it where it's like he's part of that council, like, and the Mandalorians. Like I don't necessarily think that everybody will stay on Navarro. I
Mm.
just think that like that will sort of be like the seat of their seat of power.
Okay.
But that the Mandalorians will be out in the galaxy. Honestly, in my opinion, I think that by the end of it, the Mandalorians are gonna fill the niche that the Jedi have left behind. Right? That's kind of how I see it. And that then eventually the Jedi and the Mandalorians come together under one banner as like we want the same thing. We want peace. We want justice. We want, like we have the same aim, which is not to be cops, but to be like sort of
Peacekeepers.
exemplars of what what goodness can be, and like, but cross us and you'll pay for it, right? Like, sort of having that attitude of like of like it's a I go back to the analogy of the hammer, right? A hammer can build and a hammer can destroy. I feel like the Mandalorians are the same thing, right? And the fact that the armorer is building armor with a hammer, like I feel like that's a good analogy
Mm.
for their culture. Is like it can be one of two things, and I think that like Satine saw it one way and Pre Vizsla saw it another, but the proper path is actually somewhere in the middle of like they need to be warriors, but warriors for peace, which is they're opposing ideas, but sometimes sometimes holding two opposing ideas at the same time is the closest we get to truth. Is That's sort of the yin yang balance of it, and I think a Jedi would understand that. I think that Grogu understands that, which is one of the Grogu is another, like, I think Grogu is the heir to Tar Vizsla, the spiritual heir to Tar Vizsla, as both a Jedi and a Mandalorian. And so he's a seat on that council as well, right? Representing the connection to the Jedi.
Mm.
So that's the way I see it. We have been talking for 2 hours and 21 minutes. That is what the recording says. That was not the intention this evening. That is what happened. Mandalorian is back.
And it's good.
Yep, and it was fantastic.
It's
Thank
good.
you, Joe, for indulging me so
Of
much in
course.
this
Of course.
conversation.
Always.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm excited. I I have found immense joy in this episode of The Mandalorian, and go bounce over to Rebel Cells and listen to that episode of us talking about Metamorphosis on Bad Batch, because like both these two episodes have brought me so much joy in this last 24 hours. And that's what it's about. That's what I'm here for. That's why I'm a Star Wars fan. So I hope that other people can share in that. If maybe it didn't resonate as much. Hopefully, the stuff that we've talked about will fix that a little. Let me put a band-aid on that ouchie, and then we'll just wait for next week and see what happens. By all accounts, everybody who got to see the first two episodes of the premiere is like, second episode's pretty good too. So I'm excited. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for more Bad Batch. I'm excited for Carl's new podcast, The Bat and the Cat. Go listen to that. I'm excited for, I don't actually know what the next episode of Perfect 10 is, but whatever I do over there is always a good time. We just released an episode, Roman Holiday, which is an old movie from the 50s that Missy brought to that one, talking a lot about romantic comedy and fairy tales and all that sort of thing. It's a fantastic episode, and Roman Holiday is a great movie. What a good movie. And so, yeah, Perfect 10 is always fun because it's just me talking to one of my friends about something that they love. And like, that's, I don't know, that's what this whole podcasting thing's supposed to be about. So I promise next week we will keep the ranting and the diatribes to a minimum, and we'll stay focused more on the episode. But I just thought, like, with the premiere and with sort of the conversations, there was a lot of things that I felt like I needed to say to my specific corner of the internet. So I hope that I hope everybody enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed it, Joe, because you've been sitting here. You got to listen to this podcast while you're on it sometimes.
I always have a good time, and I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to you. It's
Yeah.
you always give me a lot of. I mean, you're obviously you're like your analysis is always so in depth and like pinpoint, laser focused. You always give me a lot to think about, which is what I really appreciate. And it's cool that not only do you do that, I'm lucky enough that I get to actually, when I have a thought, instead of just listening to the podcast, I can actually interact with you about it and
Yeah.
bounce stuff off of you. So
I'll,
it's cool. For me, it's a very unique, like, cool thing.
Let me be honest and vulnerable for a second, then we'll close out the episode. I I have not been feeling it on Rebel Cells this season up until like kind of this last couple of weeks. With the tech episode, I had a lot to say on that one. Last week, not as much, but it was still a good one. But then this week, it was like, come on, like, let's talk about it. But yeah, I like this this episode of Mando. I feel like it's like, oh, okay, there's my like my source of power,
Mhm.
right? It's I think I when I was tweeting earlier, I had referred to it as like this part of Star Wars is like it's what lights the fire inside of me is like this sort of stuff. So
Mhm.
when I see other people dogging on it, like it makes me grumpy because it's like they're trying to, you know, throw water on that flame. And it's like, but it doesn't matter. This episode was so good for me specifically. I don't want to claim that it's good objectively or for anybody else, but for me specifically, it's like the arc reactor in my Iron Man chest that
Mhm.
is like keeping me alive right now. To just mix a whole bunch of metaphors and franchises, but I don't care because I feel like that is very apt. It's like I I in Iron Man 2 when he fixes the arc reactor and he puts the new core in it and it like powers up and he's like, oh yeah, and he's like that's the stuff. This episode felt like that for me. Like from the get-go when it's like she's building the helmet and I'm like, are we getting Din's backstory? And then the crocodile comes out and I'm like, is this another dragon? And then Din shows up in the N1 and blows it up and I'm like, stop, this is too much. And then Jon Favreau like as a force ghost appeared next to me and went, I'm not even started. And then I looked at the screen and there were Purgle and I was just like, all right,
Well,
I guess this one's for me. Thanks, John. This
that's
one
how
was
this is gonna
specifically
go.
for me. Because yeah, the
Well,
first 10 minutes of this episode were just like some of my favorite Star Wars of the last year. So
I didn't
uh
read too many of the impressions of the people that went to the premiere, but I did notice a few of them said, "Yeah, the first episode's like a little bit slow, but the second one is like really good." And I'm sitting there watching this episode thinking to myself, "This episode is slow?
yeah.
What is happening next week?"
Yeah. The one where he fights a crocodile, turtle, dragon dinosaur. And then has a wicked dogfight in an asteroid field. Slow. and a old west shootout with some pirates. Slow. It's a slow episode, you guys. Come on. Come on.
Okay.
What do people want? You know? Like, what do they expect? You know?
I don't think it was a criticism. I think they were
No,
just
no, I know.
I think the sentiment that a lot of them were saying were like, well,
The
you
second
know, some
episode
people.
cranks it even further.
Right, right. That's,
Yeah.
you know, people, we have to reintroduce the characters, what they're up
Yeah, yeah,
to.
yeah,
Some
yeah.
people might not have seen Book of Boba Fett, blah 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 blah. So like, I
Yeah.
get it, but like, I definitely would not categorize this episode as slow.
Well, then boy, howdy, am I excited for this time next week.
Yeah, man.
And the next episode. We don't. The great thing about the Mando episodes is that we don't know the titles until they air. I love that about it. Like with Bad Batch, it's like, whoa, the next one's the Outpost. I wonder what
They
that's gonna
told
be.
us everything like a month and a half in
Yeah,
advance. Like, oh,
yeah.
all right.
But with Mando, it's like I love the reveal every week of the like the dome, and there's the title, and you're just like, okay, cool. The Believer. I wonder what this one's gonna be. The Apostate. It's always yeah, it's great. I'm happy it's back. I'm happy to be back. Even though last year I said I was never gonna do this again.
I
And
think
I'm
all
not
of us
gonna
but you knew.
yeah, I'm not gonna let it get to me. I'm not gonna let people get me down. If like, and listen, when the show falls short, which it will at some point this season, I'm gonna be the first one to be like, this one didn't do it for me. But as long as it's delivering on this level, I'm gonna be happy. So Rick is directing 3 episodes, so I know that at least 3 are gonna be good. I think Bryce Dallas Howard is coming back for at least
Oh,
one.
cool.
So like her
Yeah, she's
episodes
awesome.
are some of my favorites as well. So we're gonna be good. We're good. We're fine. We're all fine here now. How are you? Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Joe, for hanging out. Go get some sleep. I need to get some sleep. You
Good
definitely
idea.
need to go get some sleep. And yeah, we'll be back next week for chapter 18. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Thunderquack Force Perspectives. Our opening theme is composed for us by Christy Carew. Follow Force Perspectives on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ForcePOV. And join us on Discord at thunderquack.com/Discord. Support the show by visiting us at patreon.com/thunderquack to get early access to episodes, leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast service, or buy merch at store.thunderquack.com. Force Perspectives is a part of the Thunderquack Podcast Network.